This is Jocko Podcast number 213 with Echo Charles and me, Jocko Willink. Good evening, Echo.
Good evening.
Men, this stuff that some sources sling around about America wanting out of this war, not wanting to fight, is a crock of bullshit. Americans love to fight, traditionally. All Americans love the sting and clash of battle. You are here today for three reasons. First, because you are here to defend your homes and your loved ones. Second, you are here for your own self-respect because you would not want to be anywhere else. Third, you are here because you are real men, and all real men like to fight. When you, here, every one of you, were kids, you all admired the champion marble player, the fastest runner, the toughest boxer, the big league ball players, and the all-American football players. Americans love a winner. Americans will not tolerate a loser. Americans despise cowards. Americans play to win all of the time. I wouldn't give a hoot in hell for a man who lost and laughed. That's why Americans have never lost nor will ever lose a war. For the very idea of losing is hateful to an American. You are not all going to die. Only 2% of you right here today would die in major battle. Death must not be feared. Death, in time, comes to all men. Yes, every man is scared in his first battle. If he says he's not, he's a liar. Some men are cowards, but they fight the same as brave men, or they get the hell slammed out of them watching men fight who are just as scared as they are. The real hero is the man who fights even though he is scared. Some men get over their fright in a minute under fire. For some, it takes an hour. For some, it takes days. But a real man will never let his fear of death overpower his honor, his sense of duty to his country, and his innate manhood. Battle is the most magnificent competition in which a human being can indulge. It brings out all that is the best, and it removes all that is base. Americans pride themselves on being he-men, and they are he-men. Remember that the enemy is just as frightened as you are, and probably more so. They are not supermen. All through your army careers, you men have bitched about what you call chicken shit drilling. That, like everything else in the army, has a definite purpose. That purpose is alertness. Alertness must be bred into every soldier. I don't give a fuck for a man who's not always on his toes. You men are veterans, or you wouldn't be here. You are ready for what's to come. A man must be alert at all times if he expects to stay alive. If you're not alert, sometime a German son of an asshole bitch is going to sneak up behind you and beat you to death with a sock full of shit. There are 400 neatly marked graves somewhere in Sicily, all because one man went to sleep on the job. But they're German graves because we caught the bastard asleep before they did. An army is a team. It lives, sleeps, eats, and fights as a team. This individual heroic stuff is pure horse shit. The bileless bastards who write that kind of stuff for the Saturday Evening Post don't know anything more about real fighting under fire than they do about fucking. We have the finest food, the finest equipment, the best spirit, and the best men in the world. Why, by God, I actually pity those poor sons of bitches we're going up against. By God, I do. My men don't surrender. I don't want to hear of any soldier under my command being captured unless he's been hit. Even if you are hit, you can still fight back. That's not just bullshit either. The kind of man that I want in my command is just like the lieutenant in Libya who, with a Luger against his chest, jerked off his helmet, swept the gun aside with one hand, and busted the hell out of the kraut with his helmet. Then he jumped on the gun and went out and killed another German before they knew what the hell was coming off. And all that time, this man had a bullet through a lung. There was a real man. All of the heroes are not storybook combat fighters either. Every single man in this army plays a vital role. Don't ever let up. Don't ever think that your job is unimportant. Every man has a job to do and he must do it. Every man is a vital link in the great chain. What if every truck driver suddenly decided that he didn't like the whine of those shells overhead, turned yellow, and jumped headlong into a ditch? The cowardly bastard would say, hell, they won't miss me, just one man in thousands. But what if every man thought that way? Where the hell would we be now? What would our country, our loved ones, our homes, even the world be like? No, goddammit, Americans don't think like that. Every man does his job. Every man serves the whole. Every department, every unit is important in the vast scheme of this war. The ordnance men are needed to supply the guns and machinery of war to keep us rolling. The quartermaster is needed to bring up food and clothes because where we are going, there isn't a hell of a lot to steal. Every last man on KP has a job to do, even the one who heats our water to keep us from getting the GI shits. Each man must not think only of himself, but also of his buddy fighting beside him. We don't want yellow cowards in this army. They should be killed off like rats. If not, they will go home after this war and breed more cowards. The brave men will breed more brave men. Kill off the goddamn cowards and we will have a nation of brave men. One of the bravest men I ever saw was a fellow on top of a telegraph pole in the midst of a furious firefight in Tunisia. I stopped and asked what the hell he was doing up there at a time like that. He answered, fixing the wire, sir. I asked, isn't it a little unhealthy right about now? He answered, yes, sir, but the goddamn wire has to be fixed. I asked, don't those planes strafing the road bother you? And he answered, no, sir, but you sure as hell do. Now there was a real man, a real soldier. There was a man who devoted all he had to his duty, no matter how seemingly insignificant his duty might appear at the time, no matter how great the odds. And you should have seen those trucks on the road to Tunisia. Those drivers were magnificent. All day and all night they rolled over those son of a bitchin' roads, never stopping, never faltering from their course, with shells bursting all around them all the time. We got through on good old American guts. Many of those men drove for over 40 consecutive hours. These men weren't combat men, but they were soldiers with a job to do. They did it. And in one hell of a way, they did it. They were part of a team. Without team effort, without them, the fight would have been lost. All of the links in the chain pulled together and the chain became unbreakable. Don't forget, you men don't know that I'm here. No mention of that fact is to be made in any letters. The world is not supposed to know what the hell happened to me. I'm not supposed to be commanding this army. I'm not even supposed to be here in England. Let the first bastards to find out be the goddamn Germans. Someday I want to see them raise up on their piss-soaked hind legs and howl, Jesus Christ, it's the goddamn Third Army again and that son of a fucking bitch Patton. We want to get the hell over there. The quicker we clean up this goddamn mess, the quicker we can take a little jaunt against the purple pissing Japs and clean out their nests too, before the goddamn Marines get all the credit. Sure, we want to go home. We want this war over with. The quickest way to get it over with is to get the bastards who started it. The quicker they are whipped, the quicker we can go home. The shortest way home is through Berlin and Tokyo. And when we get to Berlin, I am personally going to shoot that paper hanging son of a bitch Hitler, just like I'd shoot a snake. When a man is lying in a shell hole, if he just stays there all day, a German will get to him eventually. The hell with that idea. The hell with taking it. My men don't dig foxholes. I don't want them to. Foxholes only slow up an offensive. Keep moving. And don't give the enemy time to dig one either. We'll win this war, but we'll win it only by fighting and by showing the Germans that we got more guts than they have or will ever have. We're not just going to shoot the sons of bitches. We're going to rip out their living goddamn guts and use them to grease the treads of our tanks. We're going to murder those lousy Hun cocksuckers by the bushel fucking basket. War is a bloody killing business. You've got to spill their blood or they will spill yours. Rip them up the belly. Shoot them in the guts. When shells are hitting all around you and you wipe the dirt off your face and realize that instead of dirt, it's the blood and guts of what was once your best friend beside you, you'll know what to do. I don't want to get any messages saying I am holding my position. We are not holding a goddamn thing. Let the Germans do that. We are advancing constantly, and we are not interested in holding on to anything except the enemy's balls. We are going to twist his balls and kick the living shit out of him all the time. Our basic plan of operation is to advance and keep advancing regardless of whether we have to go over, under, or through the enemy. We're going to go through him like crap through a goose, like shit through a tin horn. From time to time, there will be some complaints that we are pushing our people too hard. I don't give a good goddamn about such complaints. I believe in the old sound rule that an ounce of sweat will save a gallon of blood. The harder we push, the more Germans we will kill. The more Germans we kill, the fewer of our men will be killed. Pushing means fewer casualties. I want you all to remember that. There is one great thing that you men will all be able to say after this war is over and you are home once again. You will be thankful that 20 years from now, when you are sitting by the fireplace with your grandson on your knee, and he asks you what you did in the Great World War II, you won't have to cough, shift him to the other knee, and say, well, your granddaddy shoveled shit in Louisiana. No, sir. You can look him straight in the eye and say, son, your granddaddy rode with the Great Third Army and a son of a goddamn bitch named Georgie Patton. All right, you sons of bitches. You all know how I feel. I'll be proud to lead you wonderful guys in battle anytime, anywhere. That is all. And that speech was delivered in June of 1944, clearly by General George S. Patton in England. And he actually delivered that speech multiple times, and this is one version of it. George Patton, if you don't know who it is, Podcast 9, we covered his book, War as I Knew It. And you probably heard the shortened version of that speech in the movie Patton with George C. Scott, which is good. Not as good as the original, though. They actually sanitized the speech in the movie for Hollywood and for the American public, which is interesting. It's interesting that they sanitize what someone says in a war movie, even though the war movie is literally about killing people, lots of people. But General Patton, he knew and understood the power of language, especially bad language. His nephew asked his son, this is another thing I read, that his nephew asked him about his use of profanity. And Patton said, when I want my men to remember something important, to really make it stick, I give it to them double dirty. It may not sound nice to some bunch of little old ladies in an afternoon tea party, but it helps my soldiers to remember. You can't run an army without profanity. And it has to be eloquent profanity. An army without profanity couldn't fight its way out of a piss-soaked paper bag. As for the comments I make, sometimes I just, by God, get carried away with my own eloquence. So, yeah, there's a time and place for profanity. When I was in the SEAL teams, I used to swear a lot when making a point. And when making a point, obviously, you want to make it stick. Mm-hmm. This is something, I think I've talked about this before, but I would bring my son out to training events, and I never swear in front of my family. Like, even right now, I don't swear in front of my family. Mm-hmm. So when my son was probably, like 6 years old, 7 years old, and I'd bring him out to a training site to observe some training, so he could start getting kind of inoculated to the loud noises, machine gun fire, teaching him the fundamentals of tactics and stuff. So when he'd come out and watch training, and then I would be debriefing, and it would just be F-bomb, sentence, half sentence, F-bomb. Yeah. I remember the first time he saw me debrief like that. And it's also the first time he probably saw me, I don't want to use the word emotional, but it's the first time he saw real intensity from me. Yeah. Because you're trying to make a point to the guys. And I will freely say that at the time, I would get really in the zone because I'm thinking that the guys that I'm training, I want them to absorb the message because I don't want them to go overseas and get killed. So, there's some levels of intensity that would happen. So, yeah, sometimes the language comes out and should have an impact. If you use it too much, obviously, loses its impact. So, like I said, we covered Patton's book, War as I Knew It, a long time ago. But Patton didn't just write that book. He actually was a fairly prolific writer. And some of what he wrote wasn't meant to be literature. It was things like general instructions to his troops. So I got some of those for us to look at just because they're good stuff. So this is one. There's two that we're going to go over today. This is from Headquarters, 3rd United States Army, 6 March 1944. Subject, letter of instruction number 1 to Corps, Division, and separate unit commanders. So this is one that's written to the commanders of the subordinate units underneath Patton. Starts off with General. This letter will orient you, officers of higher echelons, in the principles of command, combat procedure, and administration which obtain in this army, and will guide you in the conduct of your several commands. Part number 2, command. Leadership, full duty. Each in his appropriate sphere will lead in person. Any commander who fails to obtain his objective and who is not dead or severely wounded has not done his full duty. That's, by the way, just how he's kicking this thing off. Yeah. and we've definitely talked about that one before, but there you go. Welcome to working for George Patton. If you fail to obtain your objective and you're not dead or severely wounded, then you haven't done your duty. So that's the basis on which we're building this stuff. Continues, visits to the front. The commanding general or his chief of staff, never both at once, and one member of each of the general staff sections should visit the front daily. To save duplication, the chief of staff will designate the sector each is to visit. The function of these staff officers is to observe, not to meddle. Very important. Don't go up there and start trying to make little changes. No, you're up there to observe. Continuing, in addition to their own specialty, they must observe and report anything of military importance. Remember, too, that your primary mission as a leader is to see with your own eyes and to be seen by the troops while engaged in personal reconnaissance. So, think about that. Not just see what's going on, you want them to see you, too, that you're out there with the troops. Next section is execution. In carrying out a mission, The promulgation of the order represents not over 10% of your responsibility. The remaining 90% consists of assuring by means of personal supervision on the ground by yourself and your staff proper and vigorous execution. How important is that? The passing of the order is 10% of your duties. The other 90% is making sure it gets done. You don't hear that very often. Yeah. Hey, I told them what to do. That's all. That's right. I passed the word, man. Yeah. I passed the word. Not my fault. Not my problem. Yeah. Wrong answer. That's actually only say it. That's actually 90% of your problem.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, one that I've maybe used. I don't know. Maybe heard. I don't know. It's like, hey, I can only say it so many times. Kind of thing.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah, I've told them a bunch of times.
Yeah.
I sent the email. Yeah. I sent the email. No, 10% of your responsibility is passing the information. 90% is assuring by means of personal supervision on the ground. Vigorous, proper and vigorous execution. Yeah. Think about that next time you put out the word and then you kick back into your chair.
Yeah.
Wrong answer. Next here, staff conferences. I'm going to abbreviate this thing. Daily at the earliest possible moment that the G2 and G3 can get their maps posted. So G2 and G3, that's intel and operations. As soon as they can get their maps posted, a staff conference will be held, attended by the commanding general, chief of staff, and the heads of all general staff sections. And he goes through who those are. And the reason I highlighted this part, because I'm not reading this whole thing, but he says, any person present with a statement to make will do so briefly. Check. You're not in there to talk. You're not in there to hear yourself talk. You're not in there so that the commanding general, the boss, the CEO gets to see that you're in there and you said something smart. Mm-hmm. Actually, just be quiet. And if you have to say something, make it brief. It's supposed to be a brief. That's why it's called a brief. Yeah, and just to mention that again, I'm not reading this entire thing, but we're reading some big chunks of it. It talks about rest periods. Okay? Rest periods. And we know there's big controversy from my world when it comes to rest. Because once a day, no, that's probably inaccurate. Probably between 1 and 3 times a day, someone via various social media, messaging, whatever, says to me, get more rest and you don't sleep enough and all these things. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, my world is going to turn into a disaster, which, waiting on that one. So sure. Here's what, and you know what I always say, of course, it's in the book, Discipline Equals Freedom Field Manual. I wrote a book and said, you need to get sleep. Sleep is important. Without sleep, all these bad things happen. Mm-hmm. I know this, and I propagate it all the time. Sleep. Someone says, you're telling people not to sleep. No, actually, I tell people to sleep all the time. Yeah. You need to sleep. To perform optimally, you need to sleep. Different people need different amounts of sleep. However much sleep you need, get it. It's fine. It's great. I support it. So does Patton. Here we go. Rest periods. Staff personnel, commissioned and enlisted who do not rest do not last. All sections must run a duty roster and enforce compliance. The intensity of staff operations during battle is periodic. At the Army and Corps levels, the busiest times are the period from 1 to 3 hours after daylight and from 3 to 5 hours after dark. In the lower echelons and in the administrative and supply staffs, the time periods is different, but just as definite. When the need arises, everyone must work all the time. But these emergencies are not frequent. Unfatigued men last longer and work better at high pressure. So, like I tell people all the time, get sleep. Not bad for you. Do you need to sleep until 9? No, you don't. Well, some people do.
Depends when you go.
I didn't receive a return text from you today until I'm thinking it was around 10.
Yeah.
Am I right or wrong?
Well, you're probably right. I don't have those records.
We can check. So, Is that what time you woke up, just out of curiosity?
Yes.
Do you feel well rested right now? Ready to perform?
Yes.
Ready to bring your A game?
Yes, sir, I do. See, it's a long story.
And it's worth it.
Yeah, okay.
It's worth it. Were you up late last night watching the fights?
No.
Connor's
I went to
fight
sleep
was
super early.
Connor's fight was only 40 seconds long.
Yeah.
You could have been in bed at, we're talking 9.
I was going to bed, and I literally going to bed when I seen the results come through.
Okay.
But I'm not used to going to sleep that early, so I ended up waking up in the middle of the night, not being able to go back to sleep, and then you hit the rest of it. Woke up at 10.
Okay. So rest is important. There you go. It's an order from Patton that you need to get rest. Next section is location of command posts. The farther forward the command posts are located, the less time is wasted in driving to and from the front. The ideal situation would be for the Army command post to be within 1.5 hours drive in a command post and reconnaissance car of the division command post. The driving time to the front and from the command post, from the command post of the lower units should be correspondingly shorter. Much time and wire saved if command posts of higher units are at or near one of the command posts of the next lower echelon. So why am I talking about that? Because the reason is, think about how important communication is between the senior leadership and the frontline troops. And when you have big separation. Now, what's nice these days, and he goes into a bunch of stuff talking about, when he's talking about wire versus radio. Do you know what that means? They used to actually string out wire. So if you had a forward post 2 miles from me, we would string wire between the two of us so we could talk.
Like phone wire.
Yeah, like phone wire, like little phone wire. Huh. And in that opening speech, when he's talking about a guy in Tunisia putting wire up on a telephone, that's what he's talking about. Yeah. Because radios at that time were way less reliable than they are now. Yeah. So now we can overcome a lot of this with technology, but just showing the importance of, and by the way, he's not even talking about wire. He's talking about being able to go there and see what's happening. Mm-hmm. So there's ways to overcome this. I guess my point in calling this out is showing how important visible leadership is, right? How important face-to-face is from a leadership perspective. Combat procedure, next section, maps. We are too prone to believe that we acquire merit solely through the study of maps in the safe seclusion of a command post. Maps are necessary in order to see the whole panorama of battle and to permit intelligent planning. Further, and this is very important, a study of the map will indicate where critical situations exist or are apt to develop, and so indicate where the commander should be. In the higher echelons, a layered map of the whole theater is reasonable to scale, showing roads, railways, streams, and towns more useful than a large-scale map cluttered up with ground force. So the reason that I put this in here is looking visually at something real. Mm-hmm. This is a little bit of just an eye opener, right? You have everything's virtual now, right? We can look at virtual charts, we can see virtual diagrams, we can see virtual spreadsheets, we can see market data, and I get it. And there's much of the time, virtual data has some superior qualities of it because you can manipulate it, you can watch it move, you can dig into it, you can click on the link, right? And see where the source of the data is, and all that stuff is good. All I'm saying, and the only reason I bring this up is because sometimes the physical map, the physical chart, the physical spreadsheet that you can look at, that you can put up on a wall and say, let's talk through this. Sometimes, and part of this I think is just my personality, the way that people have different types of learning, right? The way my brain works, sometimes to look at something that's actually physically there, sometimes works better for me than the virtual thing that I'm looking at on a screen. Yeah. Just throwing that out there.
Makes sense.
I don't know if you feel that way.
Well, I feel like if, when you're talking about a map or even like a diagram, if I have it physically in front of me and then you're obviously physically in front of me. Mm-hmm. So we're both physically there. We can kind of interact with it in the physical world. So I can point here and maybe even mark it here with a pencil.
Which you can do. That's what I'm saying. Like nowadays, you can have an iPad, right? And we could be marking that things up. So there's some closure. The gap is getting closed on this.
Yeah. Yeah, the iPad's it's close, but not really because iPad's only this big.
True.
And it's like when you write on it, there's that, what do you call it, like a barrier, like at the very least psychological barrier between the actual document, and us. Right. It feels like it. Yeah. Even though you're marking on, it's a touch screen, so it feels like it.
Here's one this is a real simple, straightforward one. The difference between a physical checklist on a piece of paper or on a whiteboard compared to, there's about 5 million apps, including native apps to your phone that do checklists. I personally think that I find physical lists in a notebook or on a whiteboard better. What do you think?
I think it's funny how you use the expression native apps.
Was that correct?
It's advanced. Yeah.
Was that correct?
That's correct.
That's what they are, right? Like Apple has
it comes with it.
Yeah, it comes with it.
Yeah. That's good, man. It's good. You're
been
coming along quite
over
nicely.
Here.
I could dig it.
They should contact me, actually.
Sure, of course. They probably should. Yeah.
They should, and I could dial that app where it would be squared away.
Very tactile. Right. That's what's called, right, when you can touch it.
But also one of the problems is one of the disadvantages of those kind of lists is because things are hidden, right? Like you have to open that list, right? You can't see it. So you look at a project and you don't really even see the depth of the project. Whereas if you have like a physical list that you're looking at, you say, oh, that project is gonna take some labor.
Yeah, I feel it for sure. I think I'm kind of used to the apps though, as far as like notes and whatever. I'm used to it. So I think like anything, the more you get used to it, the more you're like, oh, I like this or whatever.
I use the notes one. So easy. Like when in the SEAL teams, PowerPoint just started to just run everything. Yeah. Everything was briefed on PowerPoint, and that is one time when you'd bring the guys around to look at a map or bring the guys around to look at an image that you can draw on, so much clearer than just everyone sitting there. There's the separation. I guess what you call it, a virtual separation. There's some separation. Barrier. Yeah. When you'd actually pull out a map and say, here's the route, you'd be like drawing it on there. And you'd say, okay, there's a hill over here. And people seem to get it better. Yeah. Same thing with something called the force list. Which sounds really cool, but all it means is this is who's going on this mission.
Oh, okay.
And also where they're sitting in the vehicles. Yeah. The virtual force list almost always sucked. It was almost always like slightly wrong, and people wouldn't know where but we would do it on a magnet board. And everybody had their own magnet. I still have my magnet from my first deployment. My magnet just says Jocko. It's yellow. Well, the magnet's brown, and then it says Jocko, and it's off center. And it looks like somebody did it in like 5 minutes. Not like this big high speed thing, right? Yeah. No, it's this really kind of rudimentary magnet. It says Jocko.
So when you get your magnet, that's your magnet for the whole trip.
I'm making it into a bigger deal than it is.
Honestly, it's pretty dope.
But on that first deployment to Iraq, that was my magnet. When I left, I took the magnet with me.
Yeah.
Because there's some good memories with the magnet, right? Sure. You see that thing because you have on the dry erase board, the magnetic dry erase board, you have outlines of the vehicles. And then you just put your magnet gets put into position. You look at the board, you know where you're at, right?
Yeah.
And most of the time, I was in vehicle 2, in the vehicle commander seat. That's where I was most of the time, depending on what we were doing. Sometimes I would be, if I was like the assault force commander, I might be in vehicle 3, but whatever. But that little magnet, you know where it is right now?
On your refrigerator.
Yes, it is. Yeah. So when I go to the refrigerator, I remember that magnet. And one of my buddies named Johnny, like one day he sent me a picture of his magnet.
Sure.
And I sent him a picture of mine back.
Yeah. Wait. What could so? Okay. So it's a It's just a circle.
No, it's
magnet.
not a circle. It's a square. It's a rectangle.
But
yeah,
it's rectangle. But is it like just a raw magnet though, or
just
is
a
it
raw
like
magnet? A raw magnet with what's it called? You ever seen those little machines where you make a label? Label making machine. Yeah. Label maker.
Little label.
So there's a little yellow label, and the magnet just says Jocko.
Huh.
Boom, there it is. And it's off center. That's what makes me, that's what's kind of funny. Special. It's not like this special thing. I was like, hey, here. Boom, done.
Yeah, but it's like one of the, for lack of better terms, or for lack of better term, one of the trinkets of the missions, you know? It's like one of the memorabilia or whatever.
It might be, I don't know. I'd have to think of. I'm sure there's other trinkets, but that is the one thing that I go, oh yeah, those are some good times right there.
Yeah, every once in a while you get those kind, right? Something that's of use, not major, massive use, but it's like an essential part of the whole.
When we made Task Unit Bruiser, the first thing I was, okay, guys, we need magnet boards, and you know, everyone's like thinking, whatever. We'll just use the computer and all that stuff, and it's so much harder. Imagine this: you got 40 people, 40 little names. And you're dragging them around on PowerPoint. And so what, you deleted one by accident. Where'd that one go? It's from a different. The magnets, like you have a space on the magnet board. Oh, these guys aren't going on the mission. They're over here. But you can see them. And then you say, wait, we need another machine gunner. Oh, cool. Who's the machine gunner? Smith's machine gunner. Put him in the turret. Boom, we're good.
Yeah.
The physical representation is important.
Yep. Yeah, I know what it is.
Okay.
So you know what Photoshop is, right?
I do know what it is.
Okay.
It's not a native app, though.
No, sir, it is not. So that's an aftermarket one for sure. So so Photoshop is like really when you get used to it, it's like, oh, it's simple, you know. But here's the difference, and I just distilled it down. It's the interface. The interface, that's what makes it like, that's the barrier. Even if it's a simple interface like PowerPoint, you know, there's still an interface. You got to learn how to use PowerPoint, right? Yeah. So even after you learn how to use PowerPoint, you still have to interface with the system. You do. You know? So, but with a physical thing, there is no interface. There's just boom, boom, we're doing it. You look, if I want this little Jocko magnet to physically move to the front seat, watch me physically move them to the front seat.
There's no interface that happens.
Exactly.
It's just reality.
Yeah. So the feedback is instant.
Yeah. It was kind of a big deal. I remember, I'll have to reconfirm this with Leif, but there was, I wouldn't say resistance, but questions, you know, because I think I went out and just bought magnets for Task Unit Bruiser. Like, okay, here's the magnet, here's the magnet. The magnet boards were expensive too. I want to say a big magnet board costs over $100.
Yeah,
you know, which is a lot of money when you're in the Navy and you got 3 kids. Like $100 is no joke.
Oh yeah, for just a board.
Yeah. But well worth every penny.
Yeah.
Every penny.
So because you like to read physical books too.
I do.
Right. And I'm not saying necessarily compared to Audible, but like I use the Kindle, right? There's a little interface going on right there too. But technically it's quicker. There's less physical work to use a Kindle than a book.
Yeah. I think what would have to happen for me is I would have to use a Kindle or whatever digital reader thing until I learn the interface. Because right now, I can't stand those things.
Yeah, well, I do on the phone, the Kindle app or whatever. But it's the same thing. Kindle, actually, I think the actual Kindle is bigger, so it's better.
You know what's interesting? What my kids do for books for school and whatnot? They read the book as they listen to the audiobook. Which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
You know what? I did that one time. You know what book I did it for? Fields of Fire by James Webb.
Yeah.
I was listening to it and reading it.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I don't know why I decided to do that. Maybe because it was a fiction book? I don't know. But for some reason, that's what I did.
Well, there's all kinds of like different reading methods. You know, there's all these methods like to read, whether it be faster, improve comprehension, you know, all this way. And one of them is to skim, like rudimentary skim, the kind like literally like 3 seconds per page, maybe even 1 second per page.
Okay. What does that do?
Skim the whole thing first. And it creates this idea of what everything's about.
So you skim it first, then you're going to go back
and
read
read. And you read it kind of.
I was going to really throw that idea out the window.
Just skim it and then walk out the door?
Actually, so when I get a potential book for the podcast, I will say I do some of that.
Yeah.
I'll be looking through it because you know, the book for the podcast is going to have to be a good book.
Right.
And I got to make sure that it fits in with the podcast.
Right.
So I'll skim it and look for scenes that I go, oh, that's a good one. And then you know what I do is I read the end. As jacked up as that is, spoilers. I spoil the book for myself. Even though most of the time you kind of know what's going to happen. I mean, it's a war book. It's like, oh, it's World War II. Cool. We know what's going to happen, right? If the first person that's writing it, they live to write the book, so you know they're alive.
Right. Yeah.
Most of the time. There's been a few where the person, this is recovered from them or whatever. But, yeah, so I skim through them and then I find the information. But I haven't been able to prep for a podcast virtually yet. All of them have been, even there was one where I was traveling and I decided I was going to do something that I had it on PDF and I went through the whole thing and like I outlined it and stuff while virtually, and then when I got home I printed it out and brought it in.
Yeah, there must be something with the relationship between the material, the physical material in your eyeballs or something.
So let's just say this from a leadership perspective. Here's the takeaway. If the virtual methodology is not working, perhaps try a physical version. That's going to be my suggestion after all this assessment of General Patton's words. Check. All right. Now we get to plans. And what's cool about this, his plans, his section, so like the last section's a couple paragraphs long, the section before that couple paragraphs long. The section about planning, arguably the most important section to be given by the commander of how we're going to plan. This is one of the shortest sections here. Plans. Plans must be simple and flexible. I got that. I utilized that right there so much. It was ridiculous. And it was so powerful to be able to say, hey, look, because in the SEAL teams, they would lean towards wanting, and not just in SEAL teams, people do this in business all the time. They want to make plans ultra detailed because they think the more detail they put in the plan, the better the plan will be executed. Yeah. That's actually wrong. The more detail you put in the plan, look, you need to have some level of detail, but if you go overboard with the detail, now you're working on things that don't matter. You're trying to do things in a way that don't matter. You can't do that. So that's how he starts out. Plans must be simple and flexible, because nothing's going to go the way you expect it to go. And then he says this, actually, they only form a datum plane from which you build as necessity directs or opportunity offers. So the plan is barely anything. It's like, hey, this is the general idea, and then we'll make adjustments as necessity directs or as we have opportunities. They should be made by the people who are going to execute them. Right? Incredible. Once again, these are things that I did, and I when I read that, I go, man, I'm so lucky that I did that. Because to force a plan down someone's throat, or to even worse, take the problem and multiply it exponentially, force the plan down on the people below you that is very detailed and doesn't have any flexibility. That's just failure. I'd get to see that, man. I'd get to see some task unit commander coming through training and look, the guy's not a bad human. Guy actually wants to do good. In fact, wanting to do a good job can drive you to try and make a more detailed plan and force it down onto your people. That's not necessarily a person that's a bad leader. They just haven't learned the lesson yet. That might be a person that's super engaged, wants to do a great job, overachiever. Hey, look, I know how to do this. Puts together this highly detailed plan. That's not a good call, man. Yeah. It's nothing against the person. But what you have to do with that person is show them the light, right? You got to bring them to the light. Okay. So then he goes through a section on reconnaissance. You can never have too much reconnaissance. Use every means available before, during, and after battle. Reports must be facts, not opinions. Negative as well as positive. Do not believe intercepts blindly. Cross-check. Sometimes messages are sent out to be intercepted. So a bunch of good little things to think about there. Reports must be facts, not opinions. There's a term that you use in the military. It appears to be, ATB. So you'd see a person holding something. You're pretty sure it's a weapon, but you don't know. Right. Then you say appears to be a weapon. It appears to be a weapon. Or you say, people moving into appears to be a tactical position, right? So it's just one of those little things, because there's a huge difference between me saying they were moving weapons into the building or they were moving what appeared to be weapons into the building.
Right. Yeah, it's like it's not an established fact.
Not an established fact. And if you remember when we talked about the My Lai massacre, that's one of those things where the difference between appears to be and this can kind of cause those kind of problems. Same thing with police shootings, right? Someone saying, hey, this guy has a weapon, or this guy appears to have a weapon. Yeah. There's a big difference between those two things.
Yeah, legal, when they're speaking like legal terms, they're always like super careful about that. Like, they'll say allegedly, or like even though the guy just did it on camera. The suspect, even that's like a suspect. I'm watching it right here on the video. Yeah. No, it's not proven in the court of law yet. Yeah. So it's like
they're careful about that legal one.
Oh yeah.
Next section's about orders. Formal orders. Formal orders will be preceded by letters of instruction and by personal conferences. In this way, the whole purpose of the operation will be made clear together with the mission to be accomplished by each major unit. In this way, if communication breaks down during combat, each commander can and must so act as to attain the general objective. This is a little something we called decentralized command. Right? Everyone has to know what the main objective is, so when communication breaks down, which it will, we can still move forward. The order itself will be short, accompanied by a sketch. It tells what to do, not how. It is really a memorandum and assumption of responsibility by the issuing commander. So a bunch of key things there. The order is supposed to be short. The order's accompanied by a sketch. Once again, we get this visual representation thing seems to be important. Mm-hmm. And this is an important one. It tells what to do, not how. I have to brief people on that one all the time. So, and you'll also notice this. Formal orders will be preceded by letters of instruction and by personal conferences. So, a trick question that I ask companies when I'm working with them, what's better form of communication? Email or voice or face-to-face? And of course, everyone says voice. Or they say face-to-face. I'll say, what's a better form of communication? Email or phone call? And everyone goes, phone call's so much better. Right? That's everyone's gut instinct. Oh yeah, talking to someone's so much more clear. And then I say, okay, here's the problem with just talking. If we just talk, I say one thing, you hear something else. And this happens all the time. So that's why I follow up. When you and I have a conversation, I follow it up with an email and say, hey, just want to make sure we're good on this. Make sure that we're going to do A, B, and C. Yeah. And then you say, hey, I thought we were doing A, B, and D. And I say, oh, no, sorry, my fault. I didn't explain it clearly. So that's one way. The other thing is the opposite is also true. If I just send you an email, I want you to do this. There's no tone. Right. There's no expression. You might not see the importance. I might have written it clearly. So if it's important, I send you an email and I say, hey, Echo, just following up to make sure that we're on the same page, because I'm not always the best at writing stuff. Mm-hmm. But when the email I just sent you, I wanted to make sure that you understood it was A, B, and C. Did that come through? Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Or you're like, wait a second. So you want to use both, and that's exactly what he's saying here. You write it, you speak it, you write it.
Yeah, you ever see those guys or talk to those guys where you talk to them, they're all excited, you can totally tell, and then when they text you, it's like 2, 3, sometimes one word answers, and so you're kind of like, oh man, he must be kind of mad because his tone now is way different than when I was talking to him or whatever. You know, you sort of make your own interpretation of the thing depending on maybe, I don't know, maybe how you do it or something like that. But some people, that's just how they write,
For sure.
They'll be like, hey, get back to me, period. And it's like, dang, this guy's mad. He wants me to get back to him.
My son in text is like just the most horrible.
Yeah, like you.
Okay. Check.
Then again, no, but you do express certain tones, more comedic, I think, for comedic effect. Well, in my experience anyway, I'm sure, you have a whole thing. But yeah, when I was texting him, your boy, same deal. Like, he was like the younger version of you.
Yeah. He just has no, what did he say? He was in a surf contest the other day. And, so I was somewhere else. And, I'm texting him, hey, did you make it through the first heat? Because the way surf contests work, you surf in heats, and you have to get in the top 3 in each heat to advance, and then eventually you get to the finals. Mm-hmm. So I'm texting him, and this is a teenage boy, right? So it's not like he's not on his phone.
Right.
I'm texting him, hey, how'd you do? Hey, how'd the first heat go? Did you make it through? Nothing heard all day. Yeah. Finally, the end of the day, I say, hey, did you finish the contest? How did you do? He writes back, got 2, which meant he got second place in the contest. Like, that's all it said. All small letters.
Yeah.
How does it even do small letters? Because it automatically somehow on his phone, no automatic capitalization. It says got 2, which is the 17-year-old boy's way of saying, hey, Dad, I got second place today. Right. Thanks for showing some concern, and I appreciate your support as a father.
I had a great time.
Yep, that's it's all in there, right? Yeah. No, got 2. Yeah. So anyways, yeah. Follow up with, and then when I called him later or whatever, he's like, oh, yeah, first, he's giving me all the details.
Right.
Got 2. Yeah. And he talks about something called fragmentary orders, frag orders. After the initial order, you will seldom get another formal order, but you may get fragmentary orders in writing or orally, by phone or personally. Take down all oral orders and repeat them back. Have your juniors do the same to you. Again, can you imagine how many times and how important this is that this guy, General Patton, by the way, is saying, listen, when you get told to do something, write it down and read it back. That's just the standard operating procedure of life. When you get told to do something, write it down, read it back. Mm-hmm. There's nothing that instills more confidence in me than when I'm telling somebody what to do and they're taking notes on it. That's just, you go, okay, cool. I can barely even trust, look, I'm not saying this in a bad way, but I barely even trust waitresses or waiters when I'm telling them what I want and they're just looking at me like, I got this.
Yep.
I'm always nervous.
Oh, yeah.
I guess maybe really not. Sometimes I can't help myself, but I'll say, you must be pretty good. And they'll be like, yeah, I got you.
Right.
And they're looking at me like they do this all the time.
Right. Do you think that that's like a move, like a flex, right, for service industry one that's like, oh, yeah, like I'm so good.
A little bit of a flex and also just a skill, right?
Right. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like showing off the skill.
Yeah, and sometimes I don't even think they're showing off. Sometimes I just think that's what they do. Yeah. That's what they're just trying to, they're just saying like, yeah, I got this.
That's what they do on an individual level or as a company? Because
that individual,
it could be both.
That individual's like, hey, go ahead, tell. Because I always want to order right now. Yeah. When they come over to offer you water, I want to order them.
Like I don't want
to go through the sequence. When you come to me, I want to order because I already know what I'm getting. I'm getting a Caesar salad and a ribeye. That's already happening. So we already know that walking into the place. I don't need to look at the menu. I don't want to look at the menu. So when they come over and they say, they start pouring my water and I say, I'm actually ready to order. And sometimes they just look at me and say, okay, go.
Hit me.
Kind of a pro move, right?
I think so.
I think over time I've become more comfortable with it. And now when someone does that, I know they're a pro. Yeah. So I guess now I'm good with it. Yeah. I didn't used to be. When I transitioned from eating at, let's say, the restaurants where there's no pros, right? Like a normal restaurant, people are just in there, they're taking notes, right? This is like this is their secondary job, whatever. They're a teenager, whatever. Like they're just doing this to make whatever some extra money. When you go to a real restaurant where there's pros, I have confidence in those people.
Yep. Until
there's a mistake.
Yep. Yes. And I think, and I know this because I was with my wife literally, not yesterday, it was the day before, whenever, very recently, either yesterday or the day before. We were at a sushi restaurant. Okay. It was our first time there. It was nice inside, but it was kind of new, casual, trendy nice.
Okay.
That kind.
Little nervous.
Kind of minimalist, but it's like, you don't know if it's like, is this a high-end restaurant or just super trained. So hey, the jury was still out on that whole situation. So whatever. And then, he pulled one of those. I respected him for it. I like when they do that on that level. But there is a question mark in the back of my, because I'm one of the annoying type order.
You got special things you want.
You got the this and can I have extra this and I don't want a Coke, but until the food comes.
I think it's also kind of like chess. A good chess player is looking at the chessboard in chunks. So they don't have to remember every piece. They're remembering whole schemes of maneuver that are going to happen.
Yeah.
When you're ordering in the restaurant, when you say I want steak and like they already all they actually are remembering is when you say, oh, I'd like the peppercorn sauce medium, right? That's the only thing they really need to remember because they remembered everything else.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm with you though. Like if someone's like, boom, boom, they're on it and they bring everything, especially the annoying sides. Okay, so me and my wife's like this too, where she'll be like, she'll want different sauces that you don't normally get with it, like that kind. Me too. And then
I know it's a pain to have those specialty requests, right?
But it makes it so much better. But nonetheless, if they come through with that, boom, without being quote unquote reminded, and I don't even me saying reminded like it sounds condescending, but the thing is, I understand.
When they don't give you what you asked for, do you just suck it up and just deal with it, or do you say something? Which one?
What do you mean say something?
Okay,
I remind them, can I get the sriracha or whatever, or the wasabi, whatever. But
then do they act super guilty, or do they act just super annoyed?
I don't remember any time anyone acting annoyed, but
have you ever? I've done that where I've asked for some little specific thing and then they don't deliver, and then I say, hey, I actually asked for this, and they're like, and they're acting annoyed at me.
Yeah, I can see how that could happen.
And I can see where I deserve it, right? Because I'm asking for some specific
that's how I feel
thing.
too.
So that's why when somebody messes something up, I'm kind of like, okay, well. This is how it is.
I feel like I'm jamming up the whole system because I used to work service industry a long time. Yeah. So you have a system and it works so good, especially when you're dealing with like people after people, group like all day, and the system works so good. And it's probably formulated off of like something that everyone's cooperating with. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it's working.
And I'm not cooperating. I feel because I'm the customer who's not technically cooperating. You know how, because it starts with what? Drinks. Hi, everybody, sit down. 1 minute should be like 1 minute.
Water's
drinks.
Coming.
Water.
Drinks.
You want anything to drink besides water? Blah blah blah. Me, I'm like
some appetizers.
Bro, yeah. So, bro, I'm the kind of like, I do want a drink, but how's this? I want the drink to come with the food. Already jamming up the whole system. So they should be annoyed with me. In fact, I wouldn't say they should be, but if they're annoyed with me, I understand. Yeah. Oh, I'm annoying already. And it doesn't stop there. Bro, they'll bring out the sushi or whatever. I'll be like, hey, can I have 2 sides of extra wasabi, side of eel sauce, and teriyaki sauce? Sometimes I have teriyaki sauce. And it's like, bro, this guy, just ordered like everybody in here is playing the game. You're over here doing all this stuff. I'm over here trying to memorize your order without writing it down, and you're over here throwing this at me, so I understand.
But I think to my point earlier, they don't have to memorize your whole order. They're just like, oh, this guy's got these 2 things that are outside the normal box. So there's only really 2 things they have to remember. I think. Yeah, I think that's what happens.
I think you're right.
All this means, look, you're a leader. You're a junior leader. Your boss is going to tell you to do something. Do yourself a favor. Do your boss a favor. Don't make him wonder if you're a waiter or waitress that can handle the scenario. Don't make him wonder that. You whip out your notebook and you go, hey, boss, let me just read this back to you, what you told me, because I want to get this 100% right. And you say, okay, awesome. Yeah. Up the confidence level.
Good idea.
That's my recommendation. Next section, warning orders. Warning orders are vital and must be issued in time. This requirement applies not only to combat units, but also the surgeon, signal officer, quartermaster, and ordnance officer, engineering officer, who must get warning orders promptly. They too have plans to make. And warning orders is the initial thing that you tell the troops. Hey, we might be attacking. Get ready for this. That's a warning order. I sent somebody a warning order the other day. Oh yeah, I remember what it was. And, I literally, because he's another team guy. Mm-hmm. And I said, hey, here's a warning order.
Oh yeah, you call it a warning order?
Yeah,
like you classify it.
Hey, here's the warning order.
Yeah.
Because I was just giving them a heads up. We got a possible scenario.
I'll do that too. I'll say new mission though. Like I'll indicate what this is coming. Down
so here's the thing with that. New mission means you're going to tell them exactly what's going on. Mm-hmm. Warning order, you give them just because. Warning order is just a heads up.
Right, like this might
be happening. And here's kind of the general thing we think is going to be happening. So you can give it to them a little bit earlier. New mission means now you got all this prep to do because you didn't get a warning order.
Oh, right.
Step up your game.
I'm sure.
Next, keep troops informed. Use every means before and after combat to tell troops what they are going to do and what they have done. Boom. There you go. I believe there's a whole section in that in the book called Leadership Strategy and Tactics. And I think it's literally called Keep the Troops Informed. Next, administration, supply. I was thinking, I'll skip this because whatever. No, here's what it says. The onus of supply rests equally on the giver and the taker. That is so important. Instead of, hey, where's our dang supplies? It's their fault. It's like, no, actually, it's my fault. And then he says this, forward units must anticipate needs and ask for supplies in time. They must stand ready to use all their means to help move supplies. The supply service must get the things asked for to the right place at the right time. They must do more. By reconnaissance, they will anticipate demands and start the supplies up before they're called for. So this is what's interesting. You see both sides have to take extreme ownership of the delivery of the supplies. And what you get is interlocking fields of fire, interlocking and overlapping fields of fire, which is exactly what you want.
Yeah.
Meaning, overlapping fields of fire, meaning I'm shooting to the northwest and you're shooting also part of your coverage is to the northwest, but then you're get a little bit more to the east too. Right. So we're both looking and we're overlapping fields of fire. Mm-hmm. That's what we want. And that's what when you have extreme ownership on both sides, you get overlapping fields of fire, which means the chances of something being missed are less because the fields of fire are overlapping.
Because both got it covered.
I've never said that before.
It's good. Yeah, because even fields of fire overlapping, almost like...
I'm going to clean up that analogy, and that's going to end up being a very powerful analogy.
Yeah. It's like you both got it covered,
You both got it covered. I say something close to it a lot, which is, I say, look, when everyone in the chain of command is taking ownership of the problems get solved. Yeah. There's more to it than that. Because when you take ownership of the problem, and I take ownership of the same problem, there's overlapping fields of fire, and we will kill that problem because you're going to see it from your angle. Maybe you get 80% of it solved. I got that other 20%.
Yeah. It's like doubly insured.
Yes. And then it says this. The desperate determination to succeed is just as vital to supply as it is to the firing line. The desperate determination. Meaning, the guys in the front line, we know their lives are in danger. Supply has to have the same attitude.
Yeah.
Logistics wins wars. They got a chunk in here on replacements. They got a chunk in here on hospitals. They got a chunk in here on decorations. Decorations are for the purpose of raising the fighting value of troops. Therefore, they must be awarded promptly. Have a definite officer on your staff educated in writing citations and see that they get through. Boy, we don't do a good job of this anymore. The awards process is painful. Next section's on discipline. Anyways, going back to decorations real quick. That means when you're running a business, when you're running a team, and someone does something well, recognize them for it. Quickly, promptly. It means something. The next section is called discipline, which we're definitely fond of. There's only one kind of discipline, perfect discipline. If you do not enforce and maintain discipline, you are potential murderers. You must set the example. Check. Believe me, Patton is into discipline. We're going to read another section he goes into. That's all he's got in it here. Next section, rumors. Reports based on information secured through reconnaissance conducted after dark should be viewed with skepticism. The same thing applies to reports from walking wounded and stragglers. These latter seek to justify themselves by painting alarming pictures. Boy, that's a very astute observation, right? Okay, guys that are coming back that are wounded or walking wounded or stragglers, they're telling like it's so bad. Right. Because they don't want to look bad.
Yeah.
He says It is risky and usually impossible to move reserves during darkness on every call for help. Units cannot be wholly destroyed in a night attack. They must stick. Launch your counterattack after daylight and subsequent to adequate reconnaissance and see that it's coordinated. That's a good one. But what that basically means is, to me, when you defeat someone, you need to go in there and like finish it off 100%. Condition. And by that he means conditioning, and by that he means physical conditioning. High physical condition is vital to victory. There are more tired corps and division commanders than there are tired corps and divisions. Fatigue makes cowards of us all. Men in condition do not tire. And the last one is courage. Do not take counsel of your fears, which he seems to write that all the time, and there's a good reason for it. You're going to be afraid, don't listen to it. Don't negotiate with it. Signed, Lieutenant General, U.S. Army Commanding. Okay, so that was letter of instruction number 1. And now we're going to jump into, this one came out a little bit later, letter of instruction number 2. This letter stresses those tactical and administrative usages which combat experience has taught myself and the officers who have served under me to consider vital. And then it says, you will not simply mimeograph this and call it a day. You are responsible that these usages become habitual in your command. Even in war, 1944, we're getting ready to invade France and fight the Nazis. We're going to embark on the largest assault ever in the history of the world. That's what we're doing. And guess what? He's still saying, look, you can't just mimeograph this and call it. So even then, even with all that, you got officers that are like, okay, hey, the boss put out some word here, you can read it. No. This idea of, hey, just putting out the word being enough, this reflects what he said last time about 10%, 90%. 10% is giving the order. 90% is personally ensuring it gets done. Taking ownership of it. That's what he's talking about. That is exactly what he's talking about. Okay, so he starts it off with that. Then he goes right into discipline, which, as I said, he's a believer in the power of discipline. So he says there's only one sort of discipline, perfect discipline. I'm reading it kind of without much vigor because I've read it before. He says it all the time. I'm going to read it again with vigor because it deserves some. There is only one sort of discipline, perfect discipline. Men cannot have good battle discipline and poor administrative discipline. Oh, imagine that. You can't just be all lackadaisical back behind in garrison doing the administrative stuff and then expect you're going to have discipline when it's for combat-related subjects. You got to have it across the board. Good. Discipline is based on pride and the profession of arms, on meticulous attention to details, and on mutual respect and confidence. Discipline must be a habit so ingrained that it is stronger than the excitement of battle or the fear of death. Check. Have you ever seen the movie Soldier? Soldier. Oh, this could be a good one. You're going to have to go watch this one tonight.
Yeah. Who's in that? Or what? Which one is that?
The movie is called Soldier. It stars a famous guy. And I can't think of his name right now. But he was in Tombstone. And it's not. He looks like kind of like Patrick Swayze.
Val Kilmer?
No, he's real famous. He's a really famous actor.
Well, so Tombstone, that was Kurt Russell?
Yes, Kurt Russell. Okay, so Kurt Russell's in this movie, Soldier. You got to watch this movie.
Yeah.
This movie is a really good movie.
Okay.
Think about what I'm saying right now.
Yeah.
This movie's a really good, and it's not only surprising that I'm saying that, because it's like a sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I did.
It's a sci-fi movie. It's pretty, on the surface, you go, okay, You can barely it's the kind of movie you'd flip through in the video store and be like, whatever, another. It looks just like any other cheesy movie. It's a good movie. Yeah. Soldier. At one point in the movie, so he's this guy that's been fighting wars his whole life, and they're being replaced by cybernetic soldiers. And so he gets like sent to a space junkyard. And on the space junkyard, there's people that kind of live there that have their own little society. And he shows up there and he starts trying to, long story, but at one point, this woman asks him, because he's just like a perfect soldier, right?
Sure.
At one point, this woman, she says something along the lines of, do you ever feel anything? And he says, I think he says, yes, sir. He calls everyone sir, even females. Yeah. I think he says something along the lines of, yes, sir. Fear and discipline. Yes! Yes!
Sounds like your kind of movie.
Yes. And the other cool thing about this movie, the movie has, like, I want to say the first half an hour, there's no speaking. There's no dialogue. They're showing the kids being selected and trained. So the kid that can't keep up with the run, they kill him.
Dang, bro.
This is like my dream society.
All right. There you go.
So I'm going to go watch this tonight if I can.
I guess I will too. And shoot.
Yeah. You're going to love this movie.
Well, yeah, I'm familiar with it actually. So when you said the sci-fi, I was like, okay, I think I know which one you're talking about.
The bad kind of marginal special effects and stuff.
Yeah.
They need to remake that movie with me in it. Hey, they have tattoos. I think they have tattoos either on their arm or on their face. Oh, they have their rank on their face, but then they have tattoos of
like the barcode or something.
They have a barcode, but then they have the tattoos of the campaigns in which they've served.
Oh, no kidding.
So legit. So, fear and discipline. That's what life is as a soldier. Like, okay, you're afraid, but guess what? You have discipline. You overcome it. And according to Patton, discipline must be a habit so ingrained that it's stronger than the excitement of battle or the fear of death. And if you think about, just think about that word excitement, right? That doesn't only apply to battle. Think if you can have enough discipline that when there's stressful situations occurring around you, you have the discipline to be able to take a step back and detach instead of getting wrapped up in it. That's discipline. Everyday life. He continues on talking about discipline. The history of our invariably victorious armies demonstrates that we are the best soldiers in the world. This should make your men proud. This should make you proud. This should imbue your units with unconquerable self-confidence and pride in demonstrated ability. Discipline can only be obtained when all officers are so imbued with the sense of their awful obligation to their men and to their country that they cannot tolerate negligence. Officers who fail to correct errors or to praise excellence are valueless in peace and dangerous misfits in war. Boom.
Yeah, it's good.
Think about that. Have you ever heard leadership described as an awful obligation? That is the most exquisite choice of words that I've heard in a long time. That's what it is. An awful obligation to their men and their country. Continues on, officers must assert themselves by example and by voice. They must be preeminent in courage, deportment, and dress. One of the primary purposes of discipline is to produce alertness. A man who is so lethargic that he fails to salute will fall easy victim to an enemy. Combat experience has proven that ceremonies such as formal guard mounts, formal retreat formations, and regular and supervised reveille formations are a great help and, in some cases, essential to prepare men and officers for battle, to give them that perfect discipline, the smartness of appearance, that alertness without which battles cannot be won. So he's all into that.
What is reveille formation?
Reveille's wake up. When we had Joel on from the French Foreign Legion, what they call appel. That's reveille and wake up and get in line. And retreat, formal retreat formation. A retreat formation is putting down the flag, like is the end of the day. Hey, we're done for the day. So even when you're in garrison, you do that formally.
Right. Okay. So you.
By the way, none
formally.
of this stuff. You never do any of this stuff in the SEAL teams.
Yeah.
Like barely ever. When the only time we'll do it is like if something's gone on, a bunch of guys get in trouble. All of a sudden they'll start saying, "All right, we're going to meet every morning," and everyone goes, "Oh, come on."
Right.
You know,
bunch of misfits.
Yeah, a bunch of misfits.
So the reveille formations, that's like an official, like
wake
a
up
formal wake up sequence.
We're waking up
procedure.
at 6. We're meeting at 6:30. That's happening every day. Gotcha. And then at the end of the day, here's what we're doing. We're assembling again. We're putting out final word, and then you can go and have dinner or whatever.
Huh. Okay.
So just really highly disciplined formalities.
Yeah.
Even
just waking up.
Yeah, just waking up.
That's a procedure.
We're keeping it real across the board. Continuing on, in the Third Army, when troops are not in the actual combat zone nor engaged in tactical exercises or range firing, corps and separate division commanders will see that regular reveille formations be held in attendance, at which there will be a minimum of 1 officer per company or similar unit, and in addition, when practicable, a minimum of 1 field officer per regiment or separate battalion. B, that it shall be customary for all organizations to hold formal retreat under arms. Attendance, in addition to the prescribed enlisted men, shall be all officers of company grade. In the case of regiments and separate battalions, a minimum of 1 field officer. B, that in the case where music is available and it is practicable from a billeting standpoint, frequent regimental and battalion retreat parades and similar ceremonies will be held. Again, this is stuff that in the SEAL teams, this never happens. I mean, it happens like when someone retires or when there's a funeral. Like it does not happen where you could go years without ever putting on a dress uniform. You could go years. So just kind of saying. That unit and organizational guard shall be performed strictly within accordance to FM 26 TAC 5. When music is available, formal guard mounts will be held frequently. E, that officers in formation wear a uniform analogous to that worn by the enlisted men, and that all officers participate in all drills and marches at all times with their organizations or units. This includes marching to and from training areas and ranges. So that's the end of that list. So you can see he ain't playing around.
Yeah.
Like you're going to be highly disciplined part of this situation here.
So in life, because there's like format, like dinner time, for example. That's like another.
Yep.
I mean, that's not another, but like an example of life.
It is.
Formality. Kinda.
Hey, fam.
It's dinner time. Wash hands.
Every day, 6 o'clock.
Right.
5:55. Wash hands. 6 o'clock at the table.
Yep.
That's what we're
doing.
Be
home before dinner.
Be home before dinner. All those things.
Yeah.
Those are like things that you could put in your life. Or wake up when the alarm clock goes off. Get your workout. Like there's things you do every day, right? Yeah. Brush your teeth. Floss your teeth. Stupid, right? Until you got your teeth falling out.
Yeah.
Until you got dental problems.
Dental scenarios. Bedtime too. Well, the dinner time is a big one because it's like everyone does it. There's a procedure that's in place. Hey, wash hands. Sometimes they have one kid set the table or whatever. Maybe 2 kids, whatever. Then you can't just roll out. You got to what? May I please be excused? Yeah. And then it's like, okay, then cleanup time or whatever, however you handle that, there's different ways or whatever. And then you're sort of done, and it's everybody's a part of that.
Yeah. That's a little minor example of this.
Yeah.
Bedtime
too, I guess. Thanks.
Continues on here. Officers are always on duty. And their duty extends to every individual junior to themselves in the U.S. Army. Not only to members of their own organization. That's awesome. And this, you want to talk about, like, this is a good way to think about life as a human being, right? Like, your duty extends to every human. Like, I'm here to help other people. Not just people that I know, but everybody. Next, Americans with arms in their hands are fools as well as cowards to surrender. If they fight on, they will conquer. He says this: cases of misbehavior before the enemy will be brought to before General Court-Martial and tried under the 75th Article of War. It has been my experience that many court-martials are prone to view this most heinous offense, for which the punishment of death may be inflicted, in too lenient a manner. They should realize that the lives of troops are saved by punishment of initial offenders. Cowardice is a disease, and it must be checked before it becomes an epidemic. That sounds super hardcore. I'm going to tell you a quick story. Were you? No, it was Andy and I were training the other day. And we were training on the Jocko mat, right? Sure. So we're training on the Jocko mat. And actually, as we showed up, someone else was showing up to train too. And it was 2 adult males. And they had a 14-year-old kid with them, estimated age. Sure. And, I know the dads a little bit, I was, hey, what's going on? Oh, I bring my friend. Oh, they have their son, or he's got his son here. He trained a little bit here and there. I'm like, okay, but he's not sure about getting back into it. I guess he probably trained when he was, let's say, 8, right? Yeah. So it's been a few years. Mm-hmm. And the kid, I look over the balcony thing and I see the kid. And I go, is that him? And he's like, yeah, is he allowed in? I go, yeah. I go, hey, send that kid up here. So the kid comes up. And I'm just like hanging out, having fun, whatever. So then the kid shows up and like getting warmed up with Andy, and we take, 5-minute warm up round. And I say to the kid, I'm like, oh, hey, you trained before? And he says, yeah, I trained a little bit. And I was like, okay, cool. That's awesome. And then I do a couple rounds with Andy, and then I say, meanwhile, the 2 dads are training with Guy, by the way. This is a long story. I'm sorry. I'll make it as short as possible. Eventually, I say to the kid, hey, are you going to train? And he goes, well, I'm not sure I'm allowed to. And I said, no, actually, I own the gym. So that means you can go. Yeah, I'm telling you right now, you can go train. So come out on the mat. Because I'm thinking there's a kid here that could change his life and have a better life, and his whole world will improve if he trains jiu-jitsu, right? He's in the gym, bro. I mean, this is like a low-hanging fruit. Let's get this kid in the game.
Sure, yeah.
So then he says, I don't have a gi. What the dad, not his dad, the other guy, the friend of his dad was like, I have one for you. And I go get it. Mm-hmm. So then he runs out, goes to get the gi from the car. The kid kind of puts the gi on, comes out on the mat. You can see the kid's not really 100% down with this whole thing, right? Mm. For whatever reason, right? Maybe it's because, it's weird to be with your dad and his old man friend, right? Like, sure, yeah. I'm a 14-year-old kid. We're hanging out with these old guys doing whatever this weird, thing is. Mm-hmm. Here's the apex of the story that I've been trying to get to. Eventually, the kid's on the mat. He's in his gi. I'm training with Andy. We're on a break during rounds. And I hear the kid. So they're on a break, too, because they're doing 5-minute rounds. But it's just the 2 dads. Right. And I hear them trying to convince the kid to get around with. His dad was the beginner. The other guy is like maybe high level white belt, maybe like blue belt type level. So he's kind of showing him what to do. Yeah. And they're kind of trying to convince the kid, but the kid's kind of like, well, and so I look over there and I go, hey, you get on him right now. You're doing the next round. And the kid just like goes and starts the round.
Get on.
I go, hey, you're in. I go, you go against him now. Okay. And the kid like just obeyed. Right? Yeah. My point in saying this whole thing is like, sometimes that kind of leadership is required. Because all you're trying to do is push the kid in the right direction. Yeah. Push the soldier in the right direction. Push the employee in the right direction. Hey, get up there on that thing. Hey, just make that phone call. Hey, just go confront that guy. Like sometimes people need a little push. Yeah. That's all this kid needed was just a little push. Yeah. And he wasn't looking at me like going to say, no, I don't want to. And if he would, who knows? I would have dealt with the scenario appropriately. At least I would have tried to. Right. But sometimes people just need a little push. Oh, yeah. So this idea, and that's that whole opening speech from Patton. Say what you want about it. Here's the standard. Americans love winners. Americans hate cowards. Like that's a gang mentality that you can start. Mm-hmm. You can start it in a company. You can start in a business. We don't settle down. We don't settle for that. Right. Whatever it's going to be. Mm-hmm. You call that out, and that becomes a part of your culture, right? So sometimes when he's talking about this cowardice thing, I mean, you hear it all the time, right? You hear it in an organization. You let a little bit of slack. A little bit of slack here. That's why when Hackworth makes the call of, you say to the enlisted guys say to the officer, hardcore recondo, the officers say back, no fucking slack. That starts to become the mentality. Even though, and Hackworth even says it in the beginning, people are like, oh, who's this gung-ho, Mr. Gung-ho? It's like, no, that starts to become the standard. You have to start somewhere. So these are methods of leadership. Can people go overboard with this stuff? Of course they can. Totally. That's why there's an economy of leadership that has to be balanced. And there's so many times where Patton, again, kind of like we'd see with Chesty Puller. Like Chesty Puller, this big, bombastic figure of courage and bravery and being super hardcore, hard-nosed. When you read that book about him, man, he loved his guys. Hey, old man, you might not want to do that. Remember that? Like, was this the way he would talk to his guys?
Yeah.
And yet he was super hardcore. Patton, same thing. So he's saying, look, when you get cowardice, yes, you nip it in the bud. Get someone acting up, you go, hey, we don't act like that. And someone goes, oh, gosh. Next section is tactical usages. These are good. Combat principles. There is no approved solution to any tactical situation. Boom. There is no approved solution to any tactical situation. There is only one tactical principle which is not subject to change. It is to so use the means at hand to inflict the maximum amount of wounds, death, and destruction on the enemy in the minimum amount of time. That's what doesn't change. To so use the means at hand to inflict the maximum amount of wounds, death, and destruction on the enemy in the minimum amount of time. That's not going to change. We're holding fast with that one. Next, in battle, casualties vary directly with the time you were exposed to effective fire. Your own fire reduces the effectiveness and volume of the enemy fire, while rapidity of attack shortens the time of exposure. A pint of sweat will save a gallon of blood. That's cover and move, by the way, obviously. We're going to put down fire while we move. That's cover and move. Battles are won by fighting the enemy. Fear is induced by inflicting death and wounds on him. Death and wounds are produced by fire. Fire from the rear is more deadly and 3 times more effective than fire from the front. But to get fire behind the enemy, you must hold him by frontal fire and move rapidly around his flank. Frontal attacks against prepared positions should be avoided if possible. Cover and move, and don't attack directly. Use indirect attacks. Thank you. Thank you, General Patton. Catch the enemy by the nose with fire and kick him in the pants with fire in place through movement. Cover and move. Hit hard soon. That is with two battalions up in a regiment, or 2 divisions up in a corps, or 2 corps up in an army. The idea being to develop your maximum force at once before the enemy can develop his. That's prioritize and execute, by the way. Focus your attacks. You can never be too strong. Get every man and every gun you can secure, provided it does not unduly delay your attack. The German is a champion digger. The larger the force and the more violence you use in your attack, whether it be men, tanks, ammunition, the smaller your proportional losses. This is a tough one. This is one that you can get caught thinking that, oh, we're going to do this big attack, that there's going to be casualties. It's like, there's going to be less casualties if you do it with the biggest force you can and the most violence you can possibly do your attack with. Never yield ground. It is cheaper to hold what you have than retake what you have lost. Never move troops to the rear for a rest or to reform at night, and in the daytime only where absolutely necessary. Such moves may produce a panic. Here's tactical rules in particular subjects. Use roads to march on, fields to fight, and troops should not deploy into line until they're forced by enemy fire. When you are advancing in broken country against possible tank attacks and using leapfrog method, be sure to keep the anti-guns up as well. Leapfrog, you know what that is?
As far as I know what the game leapfrog is.
Yeah.
But
it's also cover and move.
Right.
What? Because I hold position, you leap forward. Once you get there, you hold position, meaning you either fire or you prepared to fire if you have to, and then I move. Right. So this is called a leapfrog. In mountain country, secure the heights. Enforcing a pass, secure the heights first. This is an interesting one. The effects of mines is largely mental. Not over 10% of our casualties come from them. And this is what's interesting about that is that, it's largely mental because you have fear of this thing that you can't see. But he's saying not 10% of our casualties come from them, but for my generation, it's like 70% of casualties are from IEDs, right? So a little different than just mental. Never permit a unit to dig in until the final objective is reached. Then dig in, wire, and mine. Take plenty of time to set up an attack. It takes at least, here's why I put it. It takes at least 2 hours to prepare an infantry battalion to execute a properly coordinated attack. Shoving them in too soon produces useless loss. What's funny about this is nowadays we will take 2 weeks to prepare for an attack. So he's saying, look, hey, you need 2 hours. And the thing is, he's right. If everybody knows their jobs, you put together a simple, clear plan that's flexible, you don't need all this time. In battle, small forces, platoons, companies, and even battalions can do one of 3 things: go forward, halt, or run. Think about life. Think about what you can do in life. You can go forward, halt, or run. What else is there? Go forward, halt, or run. He continues. If they halt or run, they will be an even easier target. Therefore, they must go forward. When caught under fire, particularly of artillery, advance out of it. Never retreat from it. Artillery very seldom shortens its range. So think about that. How often are we in a position where we can go forward, we can halt, or we can run? And what he's saying is you're getting attacked. Instead of going backwards, go forwards. General training. Again, skipping a bunch of sections, but general training. More emphasis will be placed on the hardening of men and officers. All soldiers and officers should be able to run a mile with combat pack in 10 minutes and march 8 miles in 2 hours. When soldiers are in actual contact with the enemy, it is almost impossible to maintain physical condition. But if the physical condition is right before they gain contact, it will not fall off sufficiently during contact to be detrimental. Hardening of men and officers. That's what we're doing. Just hardening.
Doesn't sound very comfortable, by the way.
It is not. Not meant to be. Our ability to fight at night as opposed to move into position at night for a dawn attack is pitiably bad. We must learn to execute the attack in the dark. This might be one of my favorites. Sharpen axes, pickaxes, and shovels now and keep them sharp. Just think about that. Sharpen your shovels. I've never sharpened a shovel in my life. I'm going to go home today and sharpen my shovels. You know what I'm saying? Sharpen your shovels. That's a mindset.
Yeah.
Never mind sharpen your sword. Look, your sword better be sharp. I'm going to sharpen my damn shovel.
Yeah.
In the event of.
Was that just get ready, be ready?
Yeah.
Stay ready.
Stay ready. I might have to hit you in the head with a pickaxe, and I want it to go clean through.
Or dig a hole real quick.
Or dig a hole. Either way, I'm going to be ready.
Yep.
Battles are fought by platoons and squads. Place emphasis on small unit combat instructions so that it's conducted with the same precision as close order drill. A good solution applied with vigor now is better than a perfect solution 10 minutes later. Instruction from the squad to the regiment, sand tables should be used, and the officer or non-com being instructed should give the actual orders he will give in combat. Sand tables need not be complicated. A piece of ground in the lee of a building is just as good and much simpler. I used to have this little kit. I learned this from one of the Australian SAS guys that was stationed with us over at SEAL Team 1 back in the day. And it was, you know what a secrets box is? Secrets, I think it's called.
The breath mint?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like a little tin box, right?
Yeah.
So in this little tin box, you could open it up, and I had little wood things, little wood placards, and they had each little wood placard was shaped kind of like a teardrop. Okay, so you picture a teardrop, and then on the teardrop it said PT was the first one, and the next one said PL, and the next one said RTO. So there's point man, platoon leader, radio man, and so I had one of these little teardrops for each guy in the platoon. And then I had like a few pieces of ribbon in there. And cool. The ribbon is used to go, oh, here's a road, here's a stream, here's a fence.
Oh, okay.
So what you could do is you could sit down in a perimeter and you could make a little sand table. That's what a sand table is.
Oh,
that's what he's talking about. It's like a little diagram of what's happening. And so I had these little, and I had like a couple, like a little tiny house, like a Monopoly, like two Monopoly houses. So you could be like, hey, there's a building here and there's a building here. We're going to be moving here.
Yeah.
That's what I had. And so good. You'd be able to break this thing out. You'd seem like a real pro.
It's weird. I don't think I even know what a placard technically is, but you described it pretty good. Where it's just a small teardrop representative of the personnel.
The reason you have a teardrop, the reason I had a teardrop is because then whatever point the thing was pointing at was the way the weapons was facing.
Oh, okay, yeah, good. Dang, and the Monopoly houses. Wait, was it a house or a condo? Because they're different. The house is a little green one. The condo is a big red one. I think it was a green one because it's a little bit more tactical. Yeah. And those were only because you couldn't actually show, but you could show how you're going to set up. That would be like the target. So now we see how we're going to set up. Like targets here, boom. You guys are going here. Here's where we're going to maneuver. Yeah. And then because it's way better, it's just nice. Imagine you're in the field, and you got to draw in the dirt, right?
But you're finding rocks, and you're like, no, this is you, RTO. And he's like, wait, which one is me?
Right.
No, all those problems are solved.
Yeah. You
break out the secret box. Show them what's up.
Yeah, man, it's good. Yeah, they do that in a lot of movies. For sure.
What, the secret box?
No, not this particular one, but just create a diagram of the plan, and it's like a rock, sometimes a rock, depending on the movie, obviously. Like on Back to the Future.
Yeah.
What's his name? Doc Brown, whatever. He made he's like, please excuse the crude mock-up. I didn't have the time to do it to scale, and it's all like perfect.
We would go to like these briefings, battalion briefings or brigade briefings. They had massive sand tables. You'd walk around on them.
Oh, okay.
Like all the roads were laid out. A road would be 4 inches wide, 6 inches wide, and all the buildings built out of blocks. Yeah. Out of just 2x4. Somebody, some private was sitting there sawing up 2x4s and gluing them together,
having a good old time too.
But the thing is, once again, in comparison to the thing that you just look at on a PowerPoint, when you start walking around that visual, actual model, you get a better understanding of it.
Yeah, seems like you would fully. Yeah.
So get yourself a little scrap box.
Altoids. It's like an Altoids.
Probably.
Right? Same deal.
Probably. Maybe I can make one and like show it to people. I don't think I could find. I used to have it. I can't find it anymore.
What, the secrets?
No, the whole little kit that I used to have. I might be able to find it.
You made that kit, though.
Yeah, made it.
It's not like,
made it. Dang. Maybe I need to make one that I could offer to people.
Sure.
Right? I'm sure there's people everywhere that are waiting. They need to.
Sure. Just to randomly have or what? Like, shoot.
All right. Yeah, I think that's a DIY situation. Yeah, just make yourself. I'm not going to make them.
Part of the value.
Decision's been made.
Yeah.
Kind of want to, though.
It is cool because that's the kind of stuff you do when you're a little kid. Let's face it.
That's what's awesome about being in the SEAL teams or in the military is like all the things that you did when you were a little kid, you're actually doing for real, and it's the best thing.
Yeah, and it's like real life. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, I'm really doing this.
Yeah.
I really did that.
A real mission.
You know, I really sat and briefed my guys on like killing people. You know, it's you sit there and you think back like, well, that's what I was doing. Yeah. Oh yeah, I did that. I gave that brief. You know, it's like it's crazy. It's so lucky to be in the situation where you get to grow up and do what you wanted to do. I didn't even grow up.
Yeah.
All right. Guides. Oh, officers and men must know their equipment. They must train with the equipment they intend to use in battle. Equipment must be the best operational condition when taken to the theater of operations. Yeah, you have to use what you're going to use. You have to. Guides for officers. Officers must possess self-confidence and confidence of their men. And the confidence of their men. Two of the best ways of producing this is meticulously conducted close order drill conducted by officers and platoon marches of 48 to 60 hours during which the platoon is wholly on its own. Check. In the first actions, new troops must receive aggressive leadership by all grades, including general officers who must be seen in the front line during action. Check. There is a universal failure to repeat back oral orders. This failure is certain to result in grave errors. Messages and orders must use concise military verbiage. So that's the second time he's hitting on this. Makes you start to think, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Maybe he's onto something. Mm-hmm. When you tell somebody to do something, have them tell it back to you. Mm-hmm. Make it simple, clear, and concise. Prisoners, German prisoners over 40 talk more easily than the younger ones. They must be examined separately and not returned to cages where the young ones are. Prisoners other than Germans usually talk freely and inaccurately. They too should be examined out of hearing and later separated from the young Nazis. Yeah, you can imagine. I mean, just like we read in unit, it's not unit 731. Oh, Ordinary Men. In the police battalion, the older Nazis, like they weren't convinced. You can imagine when you capture them, they're like, all right, let me tell you what's going on. You capture a young, militant, 15-year-old Nazi Hitler Youth. He's not going to say anything to you. He's going to say blood and honor, and that's it.
Yeah.
There is a tendency for the chain of command to overload junior officers with excessive requirements in the way of training and reports. You will alleviate this burden by eliminating non-essential demands. Boom, there you go. Everybody should listen to that. Part of it, you know how you get in situations where your basic attitude, it sucked for me. I had to go through it. Now I'm going to make you go through it too.
Yeah.
That's what I think. Some of this is because of that. Some of it's because people lose memory of what it was like.
Yeah.
And so they just carry on a tradition. Some of it's like, oh, I had to do those reports when I was a new guy. Now you're going to do them too.
Yeah. I wonder, what do you think about that? There's kind of two parts. There's the part where it's like, okay, there's some valuable things that a new guy has to go through that seem like a hazing or a blah, blah, blah. Yes. But it actually serves the actual purpose, right? And then there's that additional, like, oh, that's the tradition. As a new guy, you got to, I don't know, pay your dues, for lack of a better term. Do you think there's value in that?
There is some value. There is definitely some value. And also, and Leif and I talk about this all the time, when we got told to do paperwork and Leif and Seth didn't want to do paperwork and they're like, Jocko, can you put a stop to this? And I'm like, no, actually, we're going to do the paperwork. That doesn't mean that I said, oh, I like doing the paperwork and I think it's beneficial. No, I was trying to build a relationship with my boss. As often as I could, especially overseas, I tried to eliminate as much paperwork as possible. Wasn't always successful, but I tried. Yeah, and there is, and when I went to officer candidate school, there was all kinds of things that seem really dumb when you're there. Especially, I went there and I'd already been in the Navy for 8 years, so I kind of understood what was happening. But those people that had just been in the Navy for 10 weeks, when the drill instructor finally said, "Hey, this is why we do this to you," and everything kind of makes sense. So there's definitely something, not looking at your meal while you're eating it, right? What does that do? Develops your peripheral vision. Yelling everything that you say, what does that do? It allows you to speak with more confidence.
Yeah.
It makes you learn how to think before you speak. Think about every time you talk, you have to yell at the top of your lungs. That's what you have to do at officer candidate school. Every single time you talk, the entire time you're there, you have to yell at the top of your lungs. So anyone that's shy is going to get over it. Anyone that's like uncomfortable. I had a professor when I went to college, and when she spoke, she covered her mouth.
Yeah.
But every time she spoke, she covered her mouth because she just didn't want to talk. And she was a professor, So she needs to go to OCS and yell at the top of her lungs for 13 weeks. She'd have walked out of there going, hand away from mouth, talking confidently, teaching the class.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I would assume that's pretty common. I don't like to yell. When they're like, hey, like actually yell and whatever. Yeah, I don't really like to do it.
Okay. I'll get you a bill at OCS. 13 weeks of yelling.
Yeah.
Maybe get that voice adjusted a little bit.
Yep.
Check. Section here on infantry. Infantry must move in order to close with the enemy. It must shoot in order to move. Covered move. I didn't make this stuff up, man. It's so interesting when people, say, "Oh, I don't know about that." It's like, no, cover and move is a real thing. It's undeniable.
Yeah.
Undeniable. When physical targets are not visible, the fire of all infantry weapons must search the area probably occupied by the enemy. I remember when I learned that for the first time. I think it might have been Roger Hayden that was like, no, shoot where you think the enemy would be. I was like, oh. Because if you think where they could be, when you're getting fired at from a certain area, you look to that area, you can't tell exactly where the enemy is, so you shoot in the 5 most likely places that you see. And everyone else in your platoon or task unit is doing the same thing, you're going to be shooting at the bad guys, like somewhere. It reduces, and when you're doing that, it reduces the accuracy of his fire and increases our confidence. Shoot short. This is another thing we learned all the time. Ricochets make nastier sounds and wounds. Do you understand that? So when you're shooting at a bad guy, shoot low.
Yeah. Someone was saying that. I think it was Roger Hayden.
It's probably Roger Hayden.
Yeah.
Walking it in with a machine gun. It's just kicking. The ricochets are flying. What ricochets, that means the bullet's tumbling when it hits you. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, and if you don't, or if you shoot high, it doesn't hit anything at all.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So shoot short, ricochets make nastier sounds and wounds. To halt under fire is folly. To halt under fire and not fire back is suicide. Move forward out of fire. Officers must set the example. Skip a few sections here. Few men are killed by the bayonet. Many are scared of it. Bayonets should be fixed when the firefight starts. Bayonets must be sharpened by the individual soldier. The German hates the bayonet and is inferior to our men with it. Our men should know this. That is psychological warfare. Like what he's actually doing, sure, bayonets are psycho, but what he's actually saying there, he's saying that, you have to sharpen your own bayonet. Think about the psychological beauty of that scenario.
Yep. Yeah.
And then you think the German hates. Does Patton know the German individual soldier hates? He doesn't know that. But you know what? I'm going to tell my freaking entire Third Army that the German hates the bayonet. They're scared of it.
It makes sense.
And we're better at it than they are. And he even starts this whole thing. A few people are even killed with the bayonet, but it doesn't matter. They're scared of it, sharpen it. We're better than them with the bayonet.
It makes sense. Like if you see I don't know, even a picture of a guy, but let's say like a guy, some crazy guy, your enemy. He's mad. He wants to kill you, and he has a gun. You're like, okay, he has a gun. We all have guns, all good. But if the guy has a psychotic blade on the front of his gun and he's like sharpening it himself, you're like, bro, I'm not going near that guy, bro. He's like, that knife makes him seem crazy.
There is something very zen and beautiful about sharpening your knife too.
Yeah,
like it's a soul cleansing task.
Yes, sir.
Sharpening your knives. And now I'm adding to that, sharpening your shovel.
God, good idea.
Next, the M1 rifle is the most deadly rifle in the world. If you cannot see the enemy, you can at least shoot at the place where he's apt to be. Same message there. He's got something in here. I might not have outlined it. But just, he basically, these things that he's saying, he knows that he's saying them for the psychological boost for his troops. He says here, the defense will consist of mutually supporting small groups arranged in depth and completely wired in. He didn't say overlapping fields of fire, but he should have. Mines will be placed. Talks about artillery, talks about armor, talks about recon, talks about anti-aircraft and anti-tanks. And look, all those things are brilliant, and I'm not breezing through them because I don't love artillery and I don't love armor. Anybody that knows anything about me knows that I love armor and artillery. But the sections in this are very, very tactical. He talks about maintenance. Weapons will be kept in perfect order. Preventative maintenance will be enforced. Particular attention should be given to tire pressure, lubrication, battery voltage, and water in radiators. Vehicles will be serviced and made operational before their crews rest. Vehicles will be marked in accordance with paragraph 6, TAC 14, AR 850, TAC 5. We did a long mission, like a whole cycle of darkness, my first deployment. And we got back to base and everyone was beat. And my leading petty officer was he was the lead nav. And the lead nav guy is the kind of guy that directs the convoy. And we got back to the gate in Baghdad, at our base at Baghdad. And he comes up on the radio and he's like, hey boss, can we just take the vehicles back and refuel, later? And I let it sit right there like that. I didn't say anything. And then I finally go, negative, take it to the fuel depot. And he's like, Roger.
He already knew the answer.
He already knew the answer.
Right when you jammed up the rhythm.
Right when I jammed up the rhythm, he already knew the answer. And he was like, Roger. And I let everybody, because we're exhausted, man. Yeah. And it was freezing cold. It was raining. So it was raining, and this is before we had doors. We didn't have doors on our Humvees. So it's probably 35 or 40 degrees because there was a little bit of sleet happening. So it was right around the freezing mark, and we did probably a 4-hour drive to get to the target area. The target was outside. It took us a few hours to get this whole thing settled. We ended up having to move around a giant cache of weapons that we captured outside in the rain, blah, blah, blah. And then we get in the vehicles. And so you're in the vehicles. It's 35 to 40 degrees. It's raining. And you got a 50-mile-an-hour wind the entire time because the doors are open. So everyone's freezing. When we get back, the sun's coming up. So it's been an entire cycle of darkness. So I don't know how many hours, but something like there's no sleep. Yeah, and the LPO comes over the radio. And he's like, hey, boss, can we just take it back to camp and fuel up vehicles later? And I'm like, negative. Let's take it to the fuel depot. He's
Wait,
like,
where was this?
Roger.
That it was
Baghdad.
Dang, it gets that cold, huh?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yep. Middle of the winter.
Yeah.
Cold, especially with that 60-mile-an-hour wind.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's the deal. You take care of that team gear.
Makes sense.
Because I guarantee you that one time you decide you're gonna not fuel up the vehicles, that's the time you're gonna get called out on a QRF. And we would get called out on QRFs pretty regularly.
Yeah.
Not all the time, but I mean it was no it was a decent percentage, not a high percentage, but there's a decent percentage that we get a call that said, hey, we need QRF out here. We need QRF over there. We'd be like, cool. You need quick reaction force, meaning troops are in trouble. Yeah. Hold on while we refuel our vehicles. No, no, we're never going to do that.
And that's not to mention the precedent, right? Where, and this goes for anything or whatever. I know it's very prevalent with kids where, they want to push up against the rule, not in some, hostile way or whatever, just sort of like, let me see. Yeah, like, I don't know, no dessert during the week or something like this. And then it's like a weeknight. Hey, can we have, come on. We've been having.
Not happening. Yeah. We're not doing it.
Yeah, you give them dessert that one day. It's kind of like, ooh, they know. Like, ooh, sure, that's the rule. But under certain emotional circumstances, maybe we can get away with that one.
The cool thing, hey, you know what? LPO's looking out for the boys. Yeah. Which is part of the job, right? There's a push-pull, right? There's always that push-pull. He's looking out for the boys. He knows they're tired. Hey, look, even if we got called for QRF, we're not super effective because we've been up for 20, 30 hours, right?
Yeah, huh?
So we're not super effective, and he's probably thinking about that too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually a good point. He would technically have like a little argument.
Yeah, it's an argument.
It's like, hey, we're like less effective, and rest is important, as Patton said. So, hey, man. So, yeah, it makes sense.
But we had to hold the line on that one.
Yeah, that makes sense. The QRF situation makes more sense.
Yeah, QRF situation is important. And
well, you'd rather the guys be a little bit more tired than the vehicles be on empty.
There was a good moment of silence on that one. The other good moment of silence, we got, this is again my first deployment to Iraq, and we got ambushed in a convoy, and pretty typical. I was in the number 2 vehicle. Pretty typical that the enemy wouldn't realize where we were because we would drive really fast, blacked out. They wouldn't realize until towards the end of the convoy. And so in this particular one, we got ambushed, and it was mostly centered on the back vehicles, right? Mm-hmm. But I was looking, as I'm looking at my field of fire, I can see all kinds of tracers going by. I can see, and then they fired a couple RPGs that went over our convoy and exploded on my side of the road because they ambushed us from the other side. So this big ambush happens, and the call comes out, which actually the call was made by the same guy that was asking the question earlier, is the LPO, who's lead nav, and he's push through, which is totally normal. So we did it, and then we just keep going, right? And I don't say anything, and then my platoon chief, again, both my LPO and platoon chief, awesome guys. We always had a good time, but he comes up on the radio, and you can hear in his voice he's a little bit spun up,
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, hey, Jocko, you heard we got ambushed back here? And I just like, long moment of silence, and I said, Roger.
Yep.
And that was it. We did what we had to do, but those are funny moments of silence that happen from time to time. Because everyone's because in my platoons, in my task unit, talking on the radio was so limited. Mm-hmm. Like basically no one talked on the radio, unless you had something really important to say. Mm-hmm. And so when there was something on the radio, everyone was 100% listening to it. Yeah. And when someone was asking me a question, everyone was 1,000% listening to what my response was going to be, especially when it's like, hey, we might get some more sleep, or hey, we just got ambushed, does Jocko know? It's like both those people are going, what are we going to do? Because there's a possibility. It's like, hey, all stop, we're going to turn around and go and hunt down these people that ambushed us, which is not a good idea. And we didn't do it. But, everyone's thinking maybe I'm going to say that, or maybe I'm going to say whatever. But everyone's listening to what my response is going to be.
Yep.
Little moment of silence, dramatic effect, possibly.
Possibly.
Or I'm just here's what's actually happening. I'm sitting there considering the situation, Okay. Is everyone okay? They must be, or we'd be getting a casualty report. Or, hey, maybe we should go to sleep before we I'm thinking through the actual situation. I'm not just, trying to be a jerk.
Right. Trying to be cool.
I'm actually thinking, okay, I know we got ambushed. I'm waiting is there a casualty? I think, I might have said something like, are we up? Or no, if the push through call comes, everyone calls vehicles up. Up from there. 6 is up, 5 is up, 4 is up, 3 is up. So I already know everyone's good. We're already good.
There you go.
Check. All right. This last section is called Care of Men. Which, once again, you look at the leadership strategy and tactics manual, and some of the most important things that I try and make as clear as possible is that you gotta care about your men. You gotta care about your people. That's what you gotta do. It's what Mukayama taught me. I mean, I wouldn't say Mukayama taught me that, but when he said it, I was like, that's the underpinning of everything, this thing that's been a tenet of my leadership principles. Let's call it a sort of a flying below the radar tenet, oh yeah, you got to take care of your people. Yeah, I totally get that. But when I heard General Mukayama talk about it, and we talked about Hackworth and I was like, oh yeah. Yeah. It's not just under the radar. Yeah. It's the real thing. Yeah. So hence General Patton has got an entire section called Care of Men. Officers are responsible not only for the conduct of their men in battle, but also for their health and contentment when not fighting. An officer must be the last man to take shelter from fire and first to move forward. Similarly, he must be the last man to look after his own comfort at the close of a march. He must see that his men are cared for. The officer must constantly interest himself in the rations of men. He should know his men so well that any sign of sickness or nervous strain will be apparent to him, and he can take such action as may be necessary. Again, why is he talking about this? This is Patton. This is, they show in the movie the big scene where he slaps around the guy, he's a coward and all that stuff. Get this guy out of this ward. He had this reputation that he's like abusive. Freaking care about your men. And think about what he's saying here. Like the last guy to move for cover. The last guy to take care of himself after a march. The rations go to the men first. Everything is about the troops. That's what a leader is. Continue. He must look after his men's feet. See that they have properly fitting shoes in good condition, that their socks fit. Loose or tight socks make sore feet. He must anticipate change of weather and see that proper clothing and footgear is asked for and obtained. So that's the last thing that he talks about is caring for your men. The successful soldier wins battles cheaply so far as his own casualties are concerned. But he must remember that violent attacks, although costly at the time, save lives in the end. So, yes, that once it's the same message he's been giving. Violence, although it seems like it's going to increase casualties, if you attack violently, it will save lives in the end. And that right there is the best way that you can care for your people. Have them ready, have them trained, have them disciplined, and then go on the attack. And this thing is signed G.S. Patton Jr., Lieutenant General, U.S. Army, commanding. So, awesome information from Patton once again. And I've got some more. We may even roll right into. I've got some more Patton stuff to talk about, because there's some things that people freak out about. He's very flamboyant, right?
Sure.
Let's face it. That's not really my style, right? Flamboyant's not really my thing, right?
Sure.
So he's got some things that we're going to need to talk about, and we will. Perhaps we'll do it next time, but eventually we'll get to it. So Patton, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater if you don't like those parts of him, because believe me, as flamboyant as this guy was, he was about discipline. He was about taking care of his people, and we can all learn a lot. We can also talk about the fact that, he sometimes didn't play the game. And he didn't get the positions he wanted to, probably oftentimes because he didn't play the game. So we can talk about all that stuff. For now, we're going to hold what we got. Just did some live gigs. And I've done DC, New York, Austin, LA. Everything's sold out. Seattle and San Francisco are still to come, but they're both already sold out. But anyways, it's been awesome. It's been an incredible experience and meeting everyone. And this isn't to ask you to come because they're already done, but I just wanted to say to everyone that came out to them, thank you for coming to them. They were incredible to be a part of. So, and I will schedule some more of them. And maybe Echo will come. I don't know.
Maybe.
Are you going to come to Seattle?
San Francisco.
San Francisco. Okay, cool. Sold out. So if someone was just kind of waiting to hear if you were going to be there, too late.
All right. Yeah.
Awesome. You know, with that, Echo Charles, we are trying to be, we're taking advice from General Patton. We're trying to be more disciplined. We're trying to be more courageous we're trying to be physically hardened. We're trying to be better. Mm-hmm. What do you know of that can perhaps help us in all those arenas? Echo.
Yes. Aside from sharpening our shovels, we can. All right, we're going to do jiu-jitsu. Train today. You didn't. I did.
Yeah.
You didn't. Yep. You were preoccupied doing various things.
I was actually preparing for this podcast, which is what I have to do.
Yeah. See, well, I prepared for this.
No.
Podcast,
You press record, which is great.
It's more of a mental preparation, but nonetheless, I feel good about that. How'd you feel? Be honest. Were you like?
My goal was
I
did not make my goal. Yeah. My goal was to be prepped by noon, come in here, train, shower, record. Yeah. That was the plan. Mm-hmm. I did not accomplish my mission. So I had to prioritize and execute.
Yep,
we owe this podcast to our people.
Yes.
We will not prioritize my personal agenda of training above taking care of the troops. The troops expect a podcast.
Yes.
On Wednesday, Tuesday night even.
Yes, sir.
We must deliver. That means I have work to do. I know it doesn't mean anything to you. I know it doesn't interfere with any part of your personal life, any part of your personal time, but I have work to do.
It does. It's just more psychological.
Okay. Well, you keep telling yourself that. I'll be over here grinding. The grind.
Regular man, of course. And, I only say that because when you came in at the tail end of training, you're ready to,
believe
record
me.
and you're prepped and you're good.
Even the way you made me look, you looked at me in a way that I was like, okay, cool. I can get changed right now.
What is that? What you just said was written all over your face.
Yeah.
Like you came in, there were some people here, boom, Jocko's, here taking some pictures or whatever. And meanwhile, I'm looking at you. And you seen me and I seen your face like, oh man, you're training, like you're lucky. And here's the actual funny part. I'm just remembering that part. The funny part is when you walked out on the mat, you took off your shoes, you walk onto the mat. And when you walk out on the mat, I think this is just kind of in all of us anyway. Mm-hmm. It's where you sort of like, you feel like, for lack of a better term, the energy of the mat.
Oh, for sure.
So that's why it feels weird if you have your regular clothes on and you walk out on the mat, you're like, bro, you feel weird. It's not jamming or it's not vibing together, Mm-hmm. So you walked out on the mat. Like the look in your eye, kind of like you were kind of warming up or something.
Like you're. Because think of how many thousands and thousands and thousands of times when I take off my flip-flops, my slippers, what we used to call them in Hawaii. Yep. I take off my slippers and go on the mat. It's like, that means something.
Yeah.
It's like when I used to put down my nods on my, on my helmet. You flip down your nods, all of a sudden it's like, okay, it's on. You lock and load your weapon. You're like, okay, it's on. You lock and load your weapon all the time. You do it in your, you're like, okay, cool. This is it. Yeah. So I walk out on the mat, take off my slippers and walk out on the mat.
You felt a little something.
And it's like, and I see you kind of giving off a vibe, right?
Yeah. Because you were literally pacing.
Oh,
and here's the thing.
Right.
We weren't being hostile, making jokes like that kind. It wasn't like, hey, why aren't you? It wasn't that. We were talking about something like legitimately normal. but you were pacing out there.
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
I wanted to
see.
freaking train really bad today, and that pissed me off. So
Hey, man, that's life. Actually, let's go. Okay, so jiu-jitsu, that's one of the many good things about jiu-jitsu, and I mentioned this before, where it's like so good exercise, so good mentally, physically, like all this stuff. And
it's
you know,
literally
of course,
fun.
Yeah, it's
Literally the
literally
funnest
fun.
thing.
Yeah, like if you come in, and this goes for me, even if I'm like there just to record or whatever, and not to train for real. Like I'm here for a specific reason, not to train or whatever. And I come and I see people training or whatever. I literally feel like I'm missing out. Like I'm missing. You know how like when your friends go hang out and go do something and you got to stay home and like do homework
like that
or whatever.
time, for sure.
Yeah, it felt like you kind of missed out a little.
I did.
Sorry, bro. It's all good. But to me, this podcast was very good. So I'm kind of glad you did. And the good news about it is Jiu-Jitsu is going to be here. It's going to be here tomorrow. It's going to be here next week.
But I can't ever get this day back of training.
Yeah,
that might have been a little something.
Yeah, maybe.
That I could have learned.
Or maybe next time it's going to be a little something. It's all part of the game. Ups, downs. You don't go every single day.
Almost sounded like a threat. Yeah.
No, sir.
And it is not too late to train right now, because we will do it.
Not a threat. You know, I'm just saying that's how it goes sometimes.
You said a little something.
I meant learning wise.
Okay.
You know, nonetheless, hey, it will be here. And actually, which kind of lends support to the point that, hey, not everyone is doing jiu-jitsu right now. But guess what?
It should be.
If you go tomorrow, it'll be there. If you walk in tomorrow.
Yeah. And also, if you walk in and it's your first day and you don't know anything about it, there's other people. Everyone on that mat has been there. There's nothing to be embarrassed about.
Yep.
Go get on the mat.
And in fact, chances are, that's a good point right there. Because chances are more people are going to be like new people than advanced people.
Sure.
It could probably, what would you say would be the average if you go on any random, and granted, a lot of times they have a beginner's class, which is even bigger percentage of new people.
I think it's a bell curve.
Yeah, it's like half, right?
Well,
Wouldn't you say half or white belts?
A bell curve. Bottom 10%, like they don't know anything. Or bottom 10%, 3 months or less of training. The middle is whatever, anywhere between 3 months and 5 years. And then there's like the top 10% have been training for, actually at our school is a lot more than, we were a little heavy on the top end. We're heavy on the bottom end too.
No,
well,
maybe, you know what? No, our school is so big and like, you know, there's the gi part, there's no gi, then it's like where, you know, like the advanced guys.
But I'm just saying, like when I get on the mat, there's so many people that have 5 years, 8 years, 10 years. It's a lot of people.
Yeah, that's true.
But there's a bunch of people too that just started.
Right. You know what it could be, and then again, I'm over here just researching it right now in my head, where could be.
That's not research, by the way.
No, not at all, actually.
That's just thinking.
Anyway, when you go out on the mat and you see all our advanced guys, or should I say all the guys that are here that are advanced, chances are you know them. Yeah. So they're like, oh, man, we have a lot of them, you know, whatever. But meanwhile,
I could say the same thing about people that I don't know.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that's true, too.
Because I don't know that guy. He must not ever train before. He could be training for a year.
Right. Yeah, that's true, too.
I mean, if someone's training here for a year, I know him.
Yeah.
But anyways.
Unless he's like a different schedule.
Unless different schedule, yeah.
But yeah, I think so. But then you have to think about the belt distribution curve, too. It's like super bottom heavy because as you progress up the belt ranks,
there's
you either progress out. Yes, exactly right. Because you progress out of the belt or out of jiu-jitsu. Right,
okay, so you mentioned gi, no gi. What does all that mean?
Thanks. Anyway, all right. Get a gi, get an origin gi. Everybody knows that's the best gi in the world, straight up factually. You mentioned facts versus opinions. This is a fact, not an opinion. Mm-hmm. Happens to be made in America, along with other stuff.
OriginMain.com.
Yes,
is where we get these things that are made in America.
All this stuff, including.
Are they 100% made in America?
Yes.
What about where the substances that they're made of? Where are those things from?
What, like the cotton that's grown?
Yes.
So they can put it through the loom. To a million different moving parts in the loom, by the way.
Yeah.
And made into the fabric that is woven and then constructed into various items.
Okay. Including gis and including jeans.
Oh, yeah. Jeans.
Boots. T-shirts.
Shirts. And
rash guards.
So hoodies.
Clothing is what we're talking. Beanies. Okay, so you can get a lot of clothing made in America. Best clothing ever.
In the world, factually.
Yeah. How many jeans have I owned in my life? Probably, my adult life, I've probably owned, let's call it, not a lot. There's not a lot. of jeans. Because I would have jeans for like 8 years, right?
Seems about right.
Maybe 8 years is long. But anyways, I'd have jeans for a while.
Yeah.
I probably had 20 pairs of jeans in my adult life.
Yeah.
Now, my jeans, Origin jeans, are the best jeans that I've ever worn. Now, I can't say I've ever worn a pair of $640, what are those called? Like
skinny jeans?
No, I haven't owned any of those. I haven't had any of the
low-rise boot cut.
Yeah, no, I mean, what's the word? Designer jeans. even at the height of designer jeans, which, by the way, at the height of all that stuff, MMA was totally wrapped around that stuff.
Oh, right. Huh.
Like, if you were to like find a picture in 2006, 2008 of a bunch of MMA guys, of which you and I both were, there is a high percentage that 50% of the individuals in that picture would be wearing jeans that had non-functional aspects to them.
I think you're right about that.
And therefore they would be determined as designer jeans. And they cost, several $100s.
Yeah.
So even at the height of that, you cannot find pictures of me in jeans that have non-functional aspects. You can only find me in jeans that have functional aspects.
I believe that, yes.
So, check. You can get jeans from Origin that are functional.
Functional, slightly designer.
There's no designer to
No
our
designer.
jeans. Zero.
No fashion.
No
fashion.
No fashion. Form follows function. So, do they look appropriate? Absolutely.
Yeah. There you go.
Do they have spirit? Yes.
All right.
Do they have soul? Affirmative.
I agree. Well, they're the only jeans that I wear, so obviously I'm trying to tease out the.
Oh, you got yourself a pair? You milked a pair?
not the Delta 68 ones.
Delta
just
68s.
just the regular, functional ones.
Factory
that I got.
jeans.
Oh yeah, very good though. Nonetheless, yes. OriginMain.com. You can get all this stuff. Also supplements, joint warfare, krill oil. These are for your joints. Stay in the game. For real. Mm-hmm. You can be super strong. Mm-hmm. You can squat 600 pounds, literally. If you can squat 600 pounds, but your joints are jamming you up, right, you're not squatting nothing.
No.
Maybe you'll do your warm-up set.
Yeah.
And then just sort of not squat or whatever, deadlift, whatever you're doing. Nonetheless, joint warfare, krill oil, these are very good for your joints, and they will keep you in the game.
Discipline and discipline go. I'm not going to say that I lived off of it on my last week and a half, where I was getting zero sleep and just having to do interviews with people.
Yeah. Well, those things end at 9 technically, but you just go, right? Because you don't leave.
Oh, no, that's cool. No, the live gigs for sure, but getting interviewed by whatever, different news channels. Yeah. I had to wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning to go on Coast to Coast AM. Have you ever listened to that?
Not that I know of.
Anyways, I was up at 1 o'clock, 1 to 3. And then at 6:45, I was sitting in a studio on national TV getting interviewed. Right. So, no sleep, no food, no factor. Guess what? Discipline Go gets them. You can feel it. Yeah. But you can feel it. Mix up some Jocko Palmer, totally good to go. Get your A game on. And take yourself one of the Discipline Go pills. Get that hitter. Molk, by the way.
Yeah. Molk. Is there Molk? I was because I've been, I have the big containers, but I have the packages left over from the mustard or whatever.
Nice. That must be nice.
Does Origin sell the packs?
Yes,
okay.
We do.
Okay. So, if you just for real just want a hitter. That's hitter, by the way. Anyway, yeah. So, Molk extra protein in the form of a dessert, hitter or otherwise. Hitter or full dessert.
And don't forget about the Warrior Kid Molk as well for the kid, so that way you don't have to feed your kid poison. Yes. Unbeknownst to them, they think you're giving them a treat.
Which you are.
Which you are. An evil treat. if it's filled with sugar, or you can give them something that's good for you.
Yeah, the front end.
Something that's good for them.
So remember, the deal with the devil, right? The deal with the devil, that whole expression.
Okay.
So I'm like, well, what does that even mean? That's, what it is? And it's really kind of simple, and you actually essentially talk about it. It's like basically you do something for short term versus the expenses at the long term.
The devil wants you to take the short term scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so that's what the treats a lot of the time for the kids are. It's the deal with the devil. It's like, oh my gosh, they're so happy with you. Oh my gosh, they're so, they're behaving so well right now because of the treat, and they're so happy. Look at their little smiles on their face.
Look at their little diabetic souls being saved by sugar. No.
Yeah, that's the devil collecting on his deal.
Yeah.
So don't do that.
Jocko White tea.
Yes, also Jocko White tea. I'm into the cans more than the brew.
I'm into both.
Yeah, I could see that. But yeah, I'm more into the cans. My way too, by the way.
Right on.
Also, Jocko has a store. It's called Jocko Store, and this is where you can get more shirts, more hoodies, beanies,
rash guards.
Oh yeah, more representative of the path directly.
Indeed. You're looking at me like you want me to say something else.
No.
I'll say, yes, you're right.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, well, there you go.
Your statement is approved.
There you go. Even Jocko
And you know what's funny? Actually, what's funny about you saying this is when I see someone, and like at the live events, of course, saw a lot of people that were representing on the path, and I would say to them, you're representing on the path.
Yeah.
So it's your little statement that you make about representing on the path has now become part of the lexicon of the troopers.
Good.
There you go, Echo Charles.
Well, good. Yeah, I feel like that's sort of what.
There's your contribution. Pressing record and saying that.
The lexicon.
Yeah.
What does lexicon mean?
Like the verbiage, the words that we use.
Oh, all right. Boom. There you go. And yes, it is always, let's face it, man. Like you see anywhere, even at an event, you see somebody representing, you're like, you feel a little something.
There's a connection.
There's a connection. Yep. Big time. And the last, jockostore.com. If you like something, get something. Represent, man. Represent. I'll see you in the wild. I'll recognize.
And if you like listening to this podcast, which if you don't, you're not hearing this right now. So I guess we're just talking to the people, everyone that's listening to this right now. Because if you don't like the podcast, you're not listening. So if you do, subscribe to it.
Yes. Is it important to subscribe? It's not important. It's not a throwaway thing.
Yeah,
so it must be. But yeah.
Nonetheless, do you think when you subscribe to the podcast, it's sort of like when you were a little kid and you got some new sneakers and it makes you feel a little bit faster? When you actually click subscribe, you're like, it's a level of commitment that you're making to the path.
Yeah, kind of. It's more of a symbol. No, it's
not hitting you.
I feel like it's more of a symbolic commitment because let's face it, you click unsubscribe just as easily as subscribe. In case like if you don't like it or whatever. But you know what? Functionally, look. If you depends on where you listen to it. I get it. But functionally, you click subscribe. It goes into your that little part where you don't have to do a search now or nothing like this. Oof. And boom, it's in your whole thing.
It's part of your day. It's part of your life. So I think I'm actually correct.
Yes.
And your initial assessment of my statement is wrong.
Okay.
When you subscribe, you take one step further down the path.
That is true. You are correct.
Right, cool. And don't forget about the Grounded podcast, which I'm sure we'll do another one. And don't forget about the Warrior Kid podcast, which I will get some of those done. And don't forget about Warrior Kid soap, IrishOaksRanch.com. It's a Warrior Kid who's actually got a business going, young Aiden, making soap so that his contribution to society, making soap so that we all can stay clean.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Also, YouTube for the video version of this podcast. A lot of people watch it. Makes sense. In fact, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes the video version will come out, a half day, sometimes even a day later than the audio.
Some people freak out about that.
Well,
where's the YouTube?
When's it coming out? And it's kind of like, hey, they say, when's the podcast coming out? Or say, brother, the podcast's been out. And I'm like, no, you know what? They watch it, and it makes sense too. Smart TVs and whatnot. Nonetheless, we do have a YouTube channel for this method of consumption.
You know Young Ty from Origin?
Yes, I do.
Him and his friends, they like on a Friday night, they'll like put YouTube on and just watch the podcast, watch Rogan's podcast, whatever. Like that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
As if they're watching UFC, but no, they're watching us talk about, Patton or whatever.
Yeah, well, and it kind of makes sense when you think about it. Okay, so the content-wise, okay, good. The content is the content. It's good content. But to sit around and watch, remember old school back in the day, I don't know, 60 Minutes, I'm sure it's still on, but whatever. Yeah. It's like, 60-minute special with, I don't know, Michael Jordan or what, I don't know, whoever they have on there. And it's just one person talking to the other person, asking questions, a Q&A, essentially.
I guess people watched it. This is the same thing.
Same thing, except the content's a little bit different, of course. So that's saying
content's for sure. Better.
I think it's better, yes.
You know what's, because 60 Minutes isn't even 60 minutes.
Yeah.
Because there's commercials in there, and then there's 3 stories, so you're actually getting 12 minutes or 7 minutes. What can you learn about Patton's theories of combat in 7 minutes?
You just learn, maybe partially one of them. Maybe.
Don't do that.
Nonetheless, Ty, keep that up. And all his friends hanging with him. Yeah, man, keep that up. That's good.
Psychological warfare. Oh, yeah, YouTube channel.
Yeah, we have a YouTube channel. That was the point of my whole thing.
Oh, and people should subscribe to it?
I say they should, yeah.
It's
beneficial.
It is. The thing that's cool is it influences what you see on your YouTube homepage.
Right.
Which I have YouTube Red.
Me too.
Or whatever, now. YouTube Premium.
Yeah.
They called it now. It used to be Red. I'm old school.
Yeah. Sure.
And look, I'm not trying to make Google more money by telling you to get YouTube Red or YouTube Premium, but it's $9 a month, and you don't have to watch a single advertisement on YouTube ever again.
Oh yeah, because they'll sneak them in the middle of the podcast. They'll sneak them in.
I know. I saw on YouTube comments on one of our podcasts, someone said, can't believe you're advertising, and I can't believe the advertisement that popped up at whatever. Yeah. And I said, can't believe you won't pay $9 a month and never have to watch an advertisement again. Premium YouTube.
Yeah.
Worth every penny. I don't throw that out there either, man. You know me. I don't like to spend that extra money.
Right. But it does make sense because, so I have a handful of YouTube channels. Mm-hmm. And they're not all premium. So when I go to the other channels to do whatever, and then I forget to sign back in or whatever, and then the commercial will pop up. I'm like, bro,
you're traumatized.
It's an event. It's an event. Yeah.
That'll happen to me. I'll be one of my kids will show me something. Oh, hey, watch this YouTube video. And so they're like, I'll go, oh, cool, let me see. And they pass me their phone or whatever. I'll click play, and out pops an advertisement. Yep. And I'll throw the phone at the wall. Get a job and get YouTube Premium. Anyways, don't forget about psychological warfare on iTunes, Google Play, MP3 platforms. A little something to help you maintain your discipline when it counts. And also to help you maintain your discipline, we got Flipside Canvas, which is owned by Dakota Meyer, to help you visually maintain your discipline. Also got Warrior Kid stuff on there. We got Mikey and the Dragon stuff on there. All kinds of good stuff on flipsidecanvas.com. As far as books go, got some books. We got the Leadership Strategy and Tactics Field Manual. Thank you, everyone, for getting that book. Appreciate it. It's live now in stores everywhere. If you need to get some for every single human being that you know, you can get them. They're available. Got Way of the Warrior Kid 3 and Way of the Warrior Kid 2 and Way of the Warrior Kid 1. So check those out as well. If you have a kid, if you know a kid, if you want to help a kid become a better human being and to literally have a better life, get them those books. Mikey and the Dragons, same thing. Kids are scared. The world is a horrible place. Let them learn how to overcome their fear. Mikey and the Dragons. Discipline Equals Freedom Field Manual. How to get after it. Extreme Ownership, Dichotomy of Leadership. Myself and my brother Leif Babin talking about the principles that we learned in combat and how you can apply them into your business and into your life too. You can also have one of us come and talk to your company. One of us on the Echelon Front team. You know who they are. And what we do is solve problems through leadership. So go to echelonfront.com for details on that. EF Online. Leadership training is not an inoculation. You need to follow up. You need to drill. And the way you do that is with efonline.com, interactive leadership training. We have the muster coming up. Go to extremeownership.com if you want to come to a 2-day seminar, conference, engagement about leadership. There's 3 of them this year. Every one that we've ever done has sold out. These are going to sell out too. And once they sell out, you can't come. And there's nothing we can do about it. We can't, we have the space and then it sells out. There's no more space. So if you want to come, go to extremeownership.com, and then EF Overwatch and EF Legion. If you need people at your business that know how to win and know how to lead and understand extreme ownership and the principles therein, then go to EF Legion or EF Overwatch. And if you are a military veteran transitioning out of the military and transitioning into your next mission, go to EF Overwatch or EF Legion. And we will connect you with the company that is awaiting for you to come and lead. And if you want to hear more from Echo Charles, if you want to hear more from me, if you have a question, a comment, an answer, then you can get in touch with us through the interwebs on Twitter, on Instagram, and on the Face. Echo is at Echo Charles, and I am at Jocko Willink. And thanks to everyone for listening to this podcast, a podcast that would not be possible without your support. So thanks for listening, and thanks for spreading the word, and thanks for telling your friends, and thanks for getting some DEFCOR gear or some Origin gear, all of which supports the podcast. And of course, the true reason for this podcast's existence is because of the safety and security we receive from the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines who defend us with their very lives. So thanks to all of you, and to our police and law enforcement, our firefighters and paramedics, our EMTs and dispatchers, our correctional officers and Border Patrol and Secret Service, and all of you first responders. You also provide us with safety and security, and we thank you for that. And to everyone else out there, remember that, like what Patton said, all heroes are not storybook combat fighters. No, every single man plays a vital role. Everybody has a job to do. Every man is a vital link in a great chain. Every man does his job. So don't ever think that the job that you're doing is unimportant. You're playing a role. And Patton makes it clear that when you're doing your job, the key is don't ever let up. Don't ever let up. Instead, every minute of every day, go out there and get after it. And until next time, this is Echo and Jocko. Out.